Hello guys, this is your friend Naruto Audio Fanfics and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto became the legendary Alchemist King, and Anko, Hinata, Ino, Temari and Haku ruled beside him Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Humankind cannot gain anything without first giving something in return. To obtain something of equal value must be lost. That is alchemy's first law of equivalent exchange. In those days, I thought was its one and only truth, how wrong I was. Naruto Uzumaki, the Fullmetal Fox. Kill the demon. Naruto ducked down a manhole to avoid the mob that was bound and determined to kill him on his 8th birthday. All I wanted to do was get some food. Is that so wrong? The young, dirty, rag-wearing blonde thought as he stumbled down several long-forgotten sewer ways. His right arm was hanging uselessly at his side, the kunai buried to the handle in his shoulder keeping it that way, and sadly the kunai was out of reach of his good arm. He couldn't hear the pursuers anymore and he prayed that meant they had given up. Looking around he realized he was totally lost and he didn't see a ladder leading up anymore. Where am I? He wondered aloud as he walked further into the darkness, his eyes adjusting faster to the dark, unknown to the boy that they were now bright gold and he could see as if the sewers were exposed to sunlight. He staggered around, his arm was totally numb, and the lacerations on his back and legs had finally stopped hurting and closed up again. Naruto shuddered as the tunnel he was in was cold. Reminds me of the time I was locked in that freezer at the store. If the old man hadn't come to find me I would have been frozen to death. The blonde thought as he continued to walk. He never noticed it as he stumbled and fell through an illusionary wall. Ah! Was his shriek before he hit the ground, thankfully on his knees and his left arm, which prevented him from hitting his now useless right arm, but sadly, the jarring impact still caused him pain. Gritting his teeth, Naruto took a couple moments to steady his breathing and once he did he looked up. Where the hell am I? He muttered. Globes sprang to life with soft glowing light as they sensed his movement. He saw the chamber was bigger than his apartment if it were doubled in size. Dirty. He thought seeing the thick layer of dust and cobwebs indicating no one had been there for a long time. Struggling to his feet he moved further into the chamber, the globe sputtering to life and he looked around. He saw a desk next to a large series of shelves crammed with books and scrolls. Near the right of the desk was a blackboard, the cobwebs obscuring what had been written there long ago. Naruto continued to check out the chamber and he found a kitchen that while dirty put the one to his apartment to shame, and opening it, he was shocked to see that it was still functioning and cold. The stove too while dirty worked. Naruto wandered the chamber and found an alcove that was used for sleeping. The bed was destroyed with age, but Naruto was getting an idea as he checked the chamber out even more. I couldn't, but no one knows it's here, I could be safe here. He thought. Checking out the room, he found a stairway in the back and climbing up metal stairs he found a door. Opening it, he found himself not far from the academy. He was surprised the door was disguised and he smiled seeing it also wasn't far from the Hokage Tower. It's settled. Naruto decided. His smile was huge until he bumped the kunai still embedded into his shoulder and nearly screamed in pain. Best get to the old man. Then get my stuff from my apartment. The blonde thought before staggering out of the dead-end alley. He smiled seeing that the hidden wall was well hidden, a dumpster was before it blocking it from view. He checked around to make sure no one saw him and staggered towards the Hokage Tower. Sasuke Sarutobi sighed as he puffed on his pipe. He'd just defeated a stack of paperwork that he would have sword had a replication jutsu on it, but he'd done it. And to think, I didn't need to use a Kaden jutsu. The old Hokage thought. His day had been filled with council meetings in the morning and to only come back to his office and find it covered with important paperwork that needed to signed. I wanted to check on Naruto today, but I just haven't had the time, he thought with regret. I need to do more for him. He was denied access to the academy by the council. Sarutobi looked at the wall with the pictures of past Hokages, his eyes landing on his successor who died 8 years ago, forcing him to take up the job once again. Minato. You would be deeply disappointed in this village and how they have treated the boy. Sarutobi heard yelling outside his door and added chakra to his ears to listen in. I don't care brat, you're not going in there. The familiar tones of his secretary. There is only one person who gets that tone of voice. Sarutobi thought with a sigh at home so many refused to see the boy as the hero he was. I don't care what you say, you old hag. I need to see the old man. Came the familiar voice that warmed the old man's heart. Get out of here, demon, or I'll give you a matching wound. Sarutobi was out of his seat and the door exploded open as he saw his secretary threatening Naruto with a kunai. What saddened him even more was Naruto already sported a wound, a kunai in his shoulder already. Anbu. Sasuke, Sarutobi shouted. A masked ninja appeared. Gopher. Take her to Ibiki. Sarutobi ordered. The secretary was knocked unconscious and taken away before she could utter any kind of protest. Another Anbu appeared, this one sporting a sparrow mask. Get my personal physician here, and tell her to bring her full kit. Sarutobi ordered as he rushed to Naruto's side, the boy going to his knees as his body was finally telling him enough was enough. The masked Anbu was gone in a flash. Sarutobi was at Naruto's side and the boy looked up at him with his usual grin. Hey Oji-san. Naruto said. I've had a hell of a day. Sarutobi didn't know if he should laugh or cry. He put a hand on the boy's uninjured shoulder. Naruto. I'm going to remove this kunai, it will hurt. Just do it, Oji-san. I trust you. Naruto said as he leaned into the old man's chest. Sarutobi took a grip of the handle and with a quick motion ripped it out. Naruto's scream of pain was swallowed by the Hokage's robes. I'm sorry, Naruto. The third Hokage said as he held the boy, using the sleeve of his robe to make a temporary bandage. It's okay, Oji-san. I know you wouldn't hurt me if you could avoid it. The 8-year-old blonde said through gritted teeth. When his doctor showed up and started to work on the blonde, who was nearly unconscious, the look on the aged medic's face worried the Hokage. Iboshi. He asked from where he was waiting as the medic worked. Most of his wounds have closed up with scarring. She gave him a look to indicate the fox had been doing it again. But, Sarutobi asked as he saw her hesitation. Dr. Iboshi Duku hated giving the Hokage bad news, especially about the blonde boy, as she had come to see him as someone special to the village leader. The amount of damage done by the kunai in his shoulder isn't healing. It's like there was something on the blade, an acid or poison that damaged the tendons and muscles beyond repair. I've had to sew up the wound as it wasn't even hinting at healing like the wounds in the past. Sarutobi looked at the unconscious boy and wanted to cry. Any chance? He asked softly. Iboshi shook her head. No, maybe if Tsunade was here and could perform a surgery, but it's beyond my skills as a healer. The arm is useless. I'm sorry, Lord Hokage, but Naruto Uzumaki is crippled for life. Sasuke Sarutobi closed his eyes. He wanted to weep for the boy he saw as a grandson. He wanted to rage at the village for what they've done to this boy who saved them, and continued to save them. But most of all, on this day, the third Hokage wished that his successor, the Yondaime Hokage, Minato Namikaze had never sealed the Kyuubi no Kitsune all those years ago. You should have let it demolish these bastards. Look what they have done to your son. I pray when they meet the Shinigami, that he isn't merciful, for they have earned their place in a special hell, reserved for child molesters and people who talk in theaters. Drip, drip, drip. Naruto looked around. What the hell am I doing back in the sewer? Wasn't I in Oji-san's office? The blonde asked and scratched the back of his head. It was then that he realized that he was using his right arm. Huh, guess Ibo-chan did her magic again and fixed me up. Naruto said with a smirk. He had liked the doctor the first time he saw her. If he was in the hospital, he was happy that she was there, cause the others ignored him. With a shrug he looked around. There were pipes filled with blue light, there were thin pipes with red light fleck passing through them, and then wrapped around both was what looked golden pipes that seemed to pulse. Looking around he walked on, seeing puddles of water all over the place. I don't remember ever seeing a tunnel like this under Konoha before. Naruto said as he walked. As he continued on for what seemed like hours, he found himself entering a monstrous chamber with a cage that reminded him of the doors to Konoha. On the front of the cage was a weird seal. From the depths of the cell he heard the sound of what sounded like someone breathing, heavy. Hello. Naruto called out, his voice echoing in the chamber. He passed what looked like a small waterfall and pond, his eyes continuing to be drawn to the cage. Is someone in there? He asked. The breathing changed and from the depths of the cage he could see a pair of eyes, 3 times bigger than him, snap open. They were gold with red flecks. Finally came to visit, I see. A deep voice said, and Naruto froze. He could feel the power from behind the seal and he was frightened. It was power like this he thought he was going to be hurt. I won't hurt you, child. But we have much to discuss. The voice said, lowering its bass, and the eyes went from high to close to ground level. Who are you? Naruto got out over his fear. A deep chuckle. I have many names. I'll use one I'm sure you know. The figure moved out of the shadows and Naruto backed up a step, seeing the giant fox on the other side of the bars, the creature's body still concealed by shadows of the cell. I am the Kyuubi no Kitsune. But I would prefer if you call me Ed. Ed. What the hell kind of name is that for a fox the size of the Hokage Tower? Naruto asked. It's mine, you little snot. The giant fox snarled. Sorry, furball. Sheesh. Get your tails in a knot, or is it that time of the month for you? The growling intensified, and for some reason Naruto felt secure. He was good at getting people built up into a rage. He'd learned long ago how to annoy and taunt people into berserker rages. I am not small, you short little shit, I'll so kick your from. I never said you were small. Naruto looked at the frothing fox in the cage, wondering if it was insane. Kyuubi, aka Ed, calmed down. Sorry about that, kid, I have a short temper and shakes its massive head. Where are we? Naruto asks. Inside you. You fell unconscious from blood loss while the Hokage's doctor was doing what she could for you. I'm sorry, kid, I can't repair the arm. Someone had a weird poison on it that resulted in muscle death. What? But my arm's fine. See. Naruto showed him his arm and moved it around. You're in your head, kid, of course it's fine. Once you return to the waking world, you'll be in pain and the arm is dead. But we'll talk about that later. First off, we have much to talk about since you're here. Yeah, why are you alive and in me for one? Naruto said. Your father, the Yondaime, Ed started, but was cut off as Naruto shouted. What do you mean my father is the Yondaime? Kyuubi with the anime-style sweat drop looked at Naruto. Hey, I think we're related somehow. He acts like me at times, it's scary. Naruto finally calmed down and looked up at the Kyuubi who had been watching him. Is that damn fox? He's grinning. Now that the drama is out of the way, kid, let's talk. XX. Naruto watched as the Kyuubi that wanted to be called Ed crouched down and got comfortable. Pull up a seat, kid, this is a tale. Kyuubi chuckled at his humor as he had made a motion for Naruto to sit with one of its 9 tails. Now, my story begins long ago. I came to this world when I was human. I passed through the gate. Gate? What gate? Naruto asked, confused. Be quiet and I'll tell you. Kyuubi Ed said with a growl at being interrupted. No more questions until I'm done. He warned the blonde sitting before his cage. Now, as I was saying, I passed through the gates, or as some call them, the gate of truth or the gate of alchemy. Opinions vary. I woke up in this world, where many people were the same, yet everything was different. It was at war, not like you shinobi like to perform, but similar to it was waged in my own, with alchemy, guns and our usual armaments of war. Naruto noticed the Kyuubi's gaze was far away. I'll skip the boring details of my attempts to return home. It happened, for a short time, and with my brother Alphonse we stopped the invasion from this world to our own. However, in stopping it we closed the gate with us on this side. Naruto could hear the sadness in the fox's deep rumbling voice. I was a fool. My experiments cost me, and in the end I found out the ultimate price was paid for sealing the gate to prevent passage. I was no longer mortal. I gained the one thing many on my world had fought and died for, but I never wanted. While I remained the same, I watched Al slowly age and die. After his death, I threw myself back into the study of alchemy. It was different here. It took me 200 years to make the proper connections and be able to use it as I once had. My arrogance was as bad as Dante's and my father's. Naruto wanted to ask about the people, but knew now wasn't the time. He felt sorry for the demon fox. He'd lost his world, his home and his family. Were alike, Naruto thought. By that time I was sad to say the world was in ruins. The war had a hard effect. The fools who were in charge tried to force alchemic reaction in weapons, and it backfired. Their ultimate bomb became a planet cleanser. I alone survived for over a century, till life began once more. In order to survive I transformed myself. I became a fox demon mixing alchemy and magic. Sadly, I was never able to find a way back. Naruto was surprised. For my arrogance, I am as I should be. Know this, kid, everything has a price. Everything. Naruto looked at the fox and nodded. So, we'll skip centuries of boring things, and come to current events. A ninja from Konoha entered my valley and stole priceless research I had done in hopes of reversing my own immortality and transformation. Kyuubi said. I tracked the ninja back to this village, but before I could even state my intentions, I was attacked. Granted, I may have gotten carried away in retaliation, but some of their attack hurt like hell. I kinda went berserk, and in the end, the Yondaime sealed me in you, his son. He apologized as my soul was ripped from my body and placed in you. He and I had talked many times from when he was a kid about your age. Naruto could feel the sadness and regret from the Kyuubi. I fought a man I called friend and was the reason he died, and your life has been hell from the day you were born. Naruto looked at the fox, its head was hanging low. Naruto stood, he wasn't sure what to say. He walked through the bars, and to the surprise of himself, and the Kyuubi, he hugged the great demon's snout. Kid, I forgive you, Ed-san. For the first time in nearly 1,000 years, a tear came to the great fox's eyes. XX. After both returned to their positions, Ed the Kyuubi looked down at the boy, his container. Well, we'll need to make some changes. First thing is you need to study. What do you mean? I study all the time. No more hiding your intelligence, kid. I know how smart you really are. Those homemade bombs, not to mention the tags. No more hiding your intelligence. Secondly, new clothes. But, we'll sneak out of the village to that Tanzuka town. Also, the idea you had about that sewer den, Kyuubi smiled. We're in luck. I'm amazed it hadn't been touched in all these years. What do you mean, Ed-san? Naruto asked, his head quirked to the side. Long before Konoha was founded here, there was another town here. The fact that it still exists will be a bonus for both of us. Don't worry about the Ninja Academy right now, Naruto. I'm going to be your teacher. I'll teach you how to brew elixirs, transmute lead into gold. I will teach you combat skills long forgotten. So kid, what do you say? When do we begin, Ed-sensei? Naruto asked. After you wake up. I think the old man is worried about you a great deal. And kid. Yeah, tell the old man what's going on. I trust him as he's the only fool in the village to care about you without prompting. After the den is cleaned up, invite him down. I think we'll have some protections up by then, not to mention, we'll see about that arm. Naruto nodded, and he felt himself becoming heavier, and as the cage faded away, he felt pain, and he knew he was once more outside his mind and back in the real world. That hurts, he muttered, using his left hand to wipe his face as his right wasn't responding to him. Naruto. Hey OG-san, he winced as he tried to set up and realized how unbalanced he was with the loss of an arm. Stay still, Naruto. You're badly hurt. There are some things I need to talk with you about. Yeah, me too, Naruto said. Like why you never told me the Kyuubi was sealed inside of me. How about my father being the one to do the sealing? Sasuke Sarutobi blinked several times. Of all the things he'd expected the blonde to say to him, that pair of questions/statements were nowhere in the top 100 he'd thought he'd have to answer for at least another decade if he was lucky. I'm getting too old for this shit. The Sandaime Hokage thought as he sunk back into the chair he'd moved next to the couch in his office. Behind him he could hear Eboshi dropping her medical bag and gasp. Oh Minato, what should I do? Say that again. Sarutobi said, using his pinky to shake his ear. You spoke with the Kyuubi. Naruto, who was sucking down a mouthful of ramen, nodded. The Hokage had sent out for enough ramen to feed the now awake Naruto, and they were sitting in his office as Naruto discussed everything that had happened while he was unconscious. He was lucky he was ambidextrous. Eboshi had his now useless right arm in a sling. Sarutobi looked at the ramen before him, and suddenly what he had eaten felt like a solid brick in his stomach. Sarutobi had talked to Naruto about his parents, about the sealing, about his decision to try and give Naruto a stable life, the fights with the council. And now, we learn the folly of our ways goes even deeper. The third thought. OG-san, I plan on leaving my apartment. I'm going into a hiding place not far from the tower. Naruto, is that wise? It's safer than that apartment that's been vandalized, firebombed, and let's not forget those break-ins where I was lucky enough to get away, and now I know why. I can't be a target for their stupidity anymore. It's cost me too much. Sarutobi winced as his eyes looked at the dead arm. I swear I'll find out who did this to you, Naruto. Ed-sensei told me there might be a way to give me a new arm, but it will take us time. If you could give me the academy material, and let me show up on the final exam. Sarutobi sighed. The council won't like this, therefore I will make sure you have all you need. Sarutobi stroked his beard in thought. And I want you to come to my family estate once a week, so I can check up on you, and have Eboshi look you over as well. Naruto nodded as he thought that would be fair. Ed-sensei suggested I head to the nearest market town to get things since my being in Konoha has resulted in overpricing, bad food and worse clothing. Sarutobi nodded. Along with your allowance, I'll add in the price that was going to the apartment. What will you tell the council, Oji-san? Naruto asked as he slurped up some more ramen. The 7 empty bowls were a start. That you are in the village under the care of a personal retainer since you were badly wounded by several villagers. A lie. Naruto asked his head. An omission. You are in the village, and in a way, the Kyuubi can be considered a retainer as he is part of you now, and you are badly wounded. A white lie with a majority of truth blended in. Naruto looked like he wanted to say something, but shrugged and continued eating the ramen before him. You still haven't told me where you will be going, Naruto. The third said after watching the boy eat quickly one-handed. Can you wait till I've cleaned it up? Blue eyes looked back at him. You really feel this place will be better for you? Yes. The one-word answer from the blonde told the third that the blonde was going to do it regardless of what he thought. After this latest, I would prefer you not be alone. I'd agree, but after this, I don't know who I can trust anymore, Oji-san. There were ninja in the crowd. Naruto looked away, the chopsticks lowering to the bowl untouched. Sasuke Sarutobi looked at the blonde child, sadness in his own eyes, and was wishing again like he had numerous times that Naruto's parents were alive. They ate in silence, and Sarutobi watched the blonde who wasn't eating with his usual gusto. He saw the thoughtful look in the younger male's eyes. Oji-san, Ed-sensei mentioned teaching me the lost art of alchemy. He said I could have a new arm. Sarutobi had read about the lost art, but he'd never found anything on how to go about it. How does he plan to do that? Sarutobi was curious about the Kyuubi and its motives. Not sure. I'm going to talk to him more when I sleep. I could use help getting a sleeping roll and a few things. Sarutobi bowed his head. He only asks for that if his apartment was firebombed again. Sigh, I'll be right back, Naruto. Sarutobi left the office and called up several Anbu. Mole, go to Naruto's apartment, get everything and seal it into a scroll, even if it's damaged. He turned. Sparrow, Eagle, find out who attack him this time, give them to Ibiki and tell him no limits. The pair of Anbu bowed, but the Hokage could see the nervous twitch of their shoulders before they left. Wolf, rat, ox, he said, and the 4 Anbu appeared. Go to the library, get the academy scrolls, and everything you can on history of the demon lords. They gasped in shock. Go. Copy it and bring it here. They vanished. Inu. Kakashi. The dog-masked Anbu stepped from the shadows. Why didn't you help him? I don't. Kakashi Hatake, Anbu captain codenamed Inu, was slammed against the hallway wall by his neck. The Sandaime Hokage was pissed. The killing intent was directed at him fully and it was making it hard to breathe. That boy in there lost his arm, because you can't see the blind foolish hatred. Sarutobi snarled. While Eboshi had been working on Naruto, Sarutobi had checked the duty roster on who was to be watching over Naruto. You not only failed your duty that I gave you, you failed your sensei's son. Because of you, Naruto will never become a ninja. Sensei's son. BBU, but he died. The Kyuubi stole. Sarutobi squeezed and Kakashi's voice ended in a gurgle. You are a stupid man. You followed those blind stupid fools and I allowed it to go on too long. Sarutobi released him and stepped back. Think about your actions have cost this day, Kakashi. Now get out of my sight. Sarutobi walked back to his office. He entered to see Eboshi had returned and was talking with Naruto. The medic shook her head. A proper diet. You're too short for your age. I am not little you. Naruto paused, shook his head and grinned. Sorry. Ed-sensei is very sensitive and he started ranting when you called me short and it was like, what's it called? Feedback. Eboshi asked. Yeah, That's it, Naruto said and looked up when Sarutobi entered. The first thing the Hokage noticed was all the ramen dishes were empty. The other thing he noticed was the blonde was smiling. Hey Oji-san, Iboshi-chan says I need to eat more if I am to be strong enough to take your job. Sarutobi raised his eyebrow at his doctor. Now, Naruto, I said you had to eat more proper foods. The doctor said. Naruto chuckled. Ramen is food. Junk food. Iboshi said. If I have to all do your grocery shopping every week. That would be a good idea. Sarutobi said, cutting in. Naruto, I've sent Anbu to your apartment to collect your belongings, and some to the library to get scrolls for you to ready and study. Naruto lowered his head. Thank you Oji-san. They woman at the library never lets me in, even shredded the pass you gave me. Sarutobi growled mentally. Once you get your new place set up, I want to see it. We'll work out things for you, I promise you this Naruto, you will not be mistreated again. Old man's right about that kid. Ed's voice entered his head. Ed sensei. No, it's the cookie monster. Of course it's me. How many other people you got in here? I don't know, I didn't know you were in me until a little bit ago. Naruto countered. Hey, yeah, sorry about that. I tend to get sarcastic. I'm establishing this link so you won't have to go unconscious all the time for us to talk. I'm also fixing the mess that is your chakra system. The Yondaime was a genius with seals, but the idiot messed up. I'll explain more later, I promise. But we'll talk more. Now pay attention to the old man, he's looking worried. Ed's voice echoed off and Naruto blinked to see Iboshi and Sarutobi looking at him in concern. Sorry. Ed-sensei was talking to me. He saw their look. He's made a connection so that I don't have to be unconscious for us to talk. He took me by surprise is all. He's fixing a few things that are messed up. Naruto, is he planning to escape? Sarutobi asked. I don't know. Hold on. Naruto closed his eyes. Ed-sensei. What? Oji-san wants to know, are you planning to escape? A bark of laughter. Kami no kid. That would not only kill you, but me as well. We are tied together. Besides, I owe you so much. No, tell the old man, I give my solemn vow I will not escape. Now, leave me alone, I have work to do. Naruto opened his eyes. He says to tell you that he gives his solemn vow he will not escape. He says he owes me. Sarutobi thought about it, and what he learned in all his studies is that a demon's word meant everything. XX. Naruto looked around the new home. He'd slipped away from the Hokage's tower under the cover of darkness and back to the alley he'd used before. Once he was back in the den, as Ed called it, he looked around. Man, this is going to take forever to clean. He muttered. Yeah, and before we do that we'll need to get your arm. So tonight while you sleep I'm going to do a data dump. Ed's voice filled his mind. A what? Naruto asked aloud. Sigh, I'm going to cheat and give you the basic knowledge of alchemy. Technically I'm going to give you my first 12 years of knowledge, along with the secret to making auto mail. We're going to exchange your dead arm. Kid, I won't like it's going to hurt like a bitch when we do it. You might want to do it and have the doc and the old man around. You'll be out for a time. Naruto paused. This data thing, will there be side effects? Will I become you? No kid. You'll have my knowledge, but you won't become me. I won't lie. You'll probably get my IQ and there might be a bit of bleed over of some of my quirks, but you shall remain you. Naruto cleaned an area to lay out his sleeping bag, the bag with the scrolls the old man had the Anbu fill he put on the desk for now. He had found a bathroom and the power and water worked, so he smiled thinking he was better here than in the firebombed apartment. See you in the morning Ed-ni-san. See you in the morning kid. Ed's voice was soft, and deep in the seal, the Kyuubi bore a sad look. The week passed quickly as Naruto with Ed's knowledge in his head gathered the supplies he would need. He also spent the week cleaning his new home to the point it seemed to shine. Don't worry kid, once we get you a new arm, we'll fix this place up something special. Ed's voice sounded in his head. Naruto had some trouble getting some of the materials he'd need for his first alchemic trial, and thus had been forced to ask the Hokage to get things for him. The third did and Naruto promised he would see it all once it was ready. Ed-sensei. What? Came a tired voice in the back of his head. How am I to get this all together and make the arm without the use of my right arm? A confused Naruto asked. Hey, look into my memories. Remember the time I was without my arm? Naruto did as Ed asked and he found the times when Ed had been human and without his arm. It's possible to do alchemy without both arms. Oh, I see, as long as you can make contact. That's why you had me prepare those alchemy circles for on my bad arm. Right. Now, once we get the auto male arm made, we'll take it to see the old man. We'll explain the thing to him and the doctor, and then draw the circle like we practiced. Naruto had spent the week learning how to draw the circles and had learned that even a meter off could mess up a reaction. Ed-sensei, can I really do this? Naruto asked as the week passed. He had some doubts. Kid, Naruto, I swear you have the gift. All I did was give you a jumpstart with my memories. The ability you have would have made the Brigadier General wet himself with envy. Naruto had searched through the memories Ed had given him. He saw the mistakes that Ed and his brother Al had made. He saw their quest for the stone to undo their mistakes and the trials they got drawn into. Mustang was in, but he did care about the people, he just couldn't afford to show it. Ed told him, I see some of the ninja in the village the same way. Naruto by Friday had everything ready and looked at the circle in the work area as he dubbed it. Well, here goes. He thought, and after placing all the items on the floor in the middle of the circle, he placed a strange hunk of metal that Ed had told him how to find called adamantium. Trust me when I say it will be a good thing down the road. The caged demon said when Naruto spent 2 days out of Konoha and deep into a hidden cavern where he found the hunk of metal, along with jewels. The jewels he gave some to the Hokage who went and had them appraised and the money given to Naruto. I'll never have to worry about starving again. Naruto thought, seeing the amount of Ryo the old man had got for just 3 of the gems. He'd have a heart attack if he saw the stash we kept and the mounds we left in the cave. Ed said, and gave Naruto a mental image of the aged Hokage at seeing the amount of precious stones and metal that could buy the Leaf Village 100 times over without making a dent. Naruto looked at the list he'd made and double-checked the figures several times. Naruto, the math is good, and you have everything properly measured and set inside the circle. Ed said as Naruto was about to check the list a 3rd time. Sorry Ed-sensei. Naruto said, letting go a sigh. He stepped before the array he'd drawn in the stone and kneeling he clapped his left hand to his bound right and then slammed the left down upon the chalk lines. Yes. Ed's mental voice crowed as the area was flooded with pale blue-white light. In the transmutation circle, Naruto watched as the components began to form together. Soon a skeletal shape of fingers, forearm and upper arm began to form. Keep focusing. Ed's mental voice warned when he felt Naruto relaxing his mental thoughts. The light kept pouring on and Naruto watched as the adamantium melted and slithered over the skeletal parts and he watched as the arm formed. Neither he nor Ed were prepared for the arc of alchemic light to arc out and strike his dead arm. Naruto screamed as pain flared through him and he was lifted off the ground and pulled into the circle. What? No. Ed screamed. This is wrong. Break the ah-h-h-h-h-h-h-h-h. Ed and Naruto's voices merged as they both screamed in pain. XX. Above in Konoha the sky darkened and lightning flashed numerous times. The villagers heard the scream that seemed to shake the village. In the Hokage Tower, Sarutobi and Eboshi rushed to the window. Naruto. They both said in concern as they heard the earth-shaking yowl of pain. This storm isn't natural, Sarutobi said, seeing the lightning. Some of the bolts were normal, but others had red or purple hues. Do you know where he lives? Eboshi asked. No, he was going to show me this weekend. Sarutobi said. Lord Hokage. The Inu masked Kakashi burst in. Reports coming in. At ease Inu. Sarutobi said. The Kyuubi isn't loose. This is something else. Naruto. Be okay. He thought of the blonde. XX. Naruto continued to scream. His whole body felt it was on fire. Ed-sensei. What's wrong? There was no response to his mental inquiry and soon the circle's energy died down. Naruto fell unconscious. XX. Where am I? He wondered. It was a void of white with some color floating around. Ed-sensei. He thought, but still no answer. This isn't my mind. Where am I? The blonde saw a pair of massive doors ahead. They were cracked open and he could see eyes looking out at him. Hello. Who are you? Ed-sensei. Ed. You know Edward Elric. A voice echoed from the door, as many more repeated the phrase. Yes. He's special to me. Naruto said. He was uncertain. He is special to many. Let me look at you. Short, blonde, loud, obnoxious. Yes, you could be his descendant for all the heavens know. Come closer, boy. My name is Naruto. Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto yelled, scowling at the gates. Laughter filled the air as hundreds of voices took it up. Yes, you shall do, Naruto Uzumaki. You are the first to touch alchemy in so very long. We impart upon you a gift. Now, brace yourself, and when you wake up, tell Ed that Roy says hello. What do you Maya? Aggghhhhhhhhhh. Naruto screamed as black tentacles shot from the gate and some impaled him, others wrapped around him. When you wake, you will be codenamed the Fullmetal Fox Alchemist. The voice said smugly. You will learn your gifts as needed. I'm sure you and the runt Elric will get a bang out of them. Naruto continued to scream as energy poured into and around him. XX. His eyes opened. They felt like they were weighed down by the Hokage monument. With a groan he managed to open them. Kid. Blinking he saw a figure leaning in close, and as he blinked his eyes into focus he saw a two-tailed fox no bigger than one of the Inuzuka pups. Wake up. Something went seriously wrong. Please wake up. Ed-sensei. Naruto said. His voice felt like his throat had been gouged with a file. He paused. Like the night of my 4th birthday. He shook his head and sat up with a groan, and once he was up he ran his hand over his face, or started to when he paused, feeling the cold metal. He jerked his hand back and stared at it in shock. It worked. Naruto said, flexing the hand. It doesn't even feel different. Naruto smiled. Oh yeah, I'm the greatest. Think again, Dobi. Naruto turned to see a two-tailed fox with blonde markings standing to the side glaring at him. Ed-sensei. He asked after a moment. You baka. Look at me. Naruto looked at the talking fox, and he couldn't help it. The snicker slipped out. That was all the tiny fox before him needed before snarling and leaping at him. No. Not the face. Not the face. Sound of ripping and a yell of, ah. Not there. Echoed around the sewers, and to the citizens above, many thought Ibiki was having a good day in the torture cells. XX. Naruto sat on his bed glaring at the bound and muzzled fox that was laying on the floor. While his wounds healed at a remarkable rate, his clothes looked like he argued with a buzzsaw and lost. Those teeth hurt Ed. The fox glared at the blonde who pulled off the remains of his shirt and tossed it aside. He took a moment to study his new adamantium arm and how it meshed with the flesh of his shoulder. He sighed. I'll have to wear sleeves from now on. He said with a sigh. The fox muzzled on the floor made some more sounds. Naruto looked at it. If I take that off, you promise not to bite me again. He paused and waited, then sighed. Blink twice if you agree. Time stretched as the fox thought about it, then blinked twice rapidly. Naruto undid the muzzle. I am so going to kick your ASMMPPH. The last was blotted out as Naruto refastened the muzzle and looked at the fox. You know, for an all-powerful fox demon, you suck at patience thing. Glare. Now Ed, don't look at me like that. I mean, yeah, I laughed, but come on. When I saw you in my mind you were bigger than the Hokage Tower. When I opened my eyes after seeing that freaky gate and some guy called Roy said to tell you hello. The fox's eyes went wide at hearing this and motioned for Naruto to shut up and free him. Naruto did so, and the fox on his hind legs put a paw on Naruto's shoulder and looked him right in the eye. Did you say Roy? Roy Mustang. He didn't say a last name. But, Naruto was saying, but the fox put a paw to his lips. And you saw the gate. Was it open? What did you see? What happened? Well, why aren't you telling me anything? Come on, Naruto. Naruto reached up with his metal hand and clamped the fox's muzzle shut. I would, but you haven't shut up since you started talking, and I want to know why you aren't you inside me. That sounded so wrong on so many levels. The blonde muttered as he shook his head before continuing. Anyway, the gate was open. I heard several voices echoing. The one I guess that called itself Roy did something, and I was pierced by numerous tentacles and some weird energy enveloped me. I was in so much pain. He stopped, seeing that Ed the fox wasn't listening, but was staring at the left arm. Naruto did as well and saw strange tattoos from his shoulder to the back of his hand. What the hell is that? The fact that Naruto was standing before his desk with his arms crossed had Sarutobi worried. He saw the boy was wearing a pair of black ninja gloves, a battered red leather duster, cargo pants and a pair of combat boots. Glad to see you're okay, Naruto. I thought you were going to perform the attachment with Eboshi and I to make sure nothing went wrong. Naruto sighed and sat in the chair. I had planned on it. But when I was making the arm, there was an incident. The gates of alchemy were kind of waiting to meet me. What do you mean? Sarutobi sighed, realizing he'd left his pipe at home and he knew this was going to be an incident where he really wanted to smoke. The gates of alchemy, also known as the gates of truth, or the doors of truth, or simply the gates or the doors, are said to be the source of all alchemical power. Naruto clasped his gloved hands together and the Hokage raised an eyebrow, remembering doing the same when he gave lectures to his genin team. It is said that an alchemist who sees the doors can perform alchemy without the use of a written or tattooed circle, due to knowledge passed on during their exposure to the gates. Naruto sighed. The gates are sentient and for some reason they passed on to me a lot of knowledge and power. Naruto looked at his right arm, then his left. They also gave me numerous abilities from past alchemists. He looked sad. Naruto. They also separated Ed and I. They gave him a body and. They did what? I need to get Anbu in. Whoa. Easy OG-san. Naruto said, holding up his hands in a stalling motion. Ed's no threat. Maybe to a squirrel or a rabbit, but he's no bigger than one of the Inuzuka pups now, and has no power. Sarutobi looked at the blonde boy he thought of as a grandson. Besides, he's like a plushie, with teeth. Naruto said, but his mind went to the image of the chibi Kyuubi like buzzsaw, but he managed to restrain the shudder of the teeth and claws. Where is Ed then? Sarutobi asked. I left him in the den. I thought it best to see you without putting your Anbu guard into a panic with a mini fox sitting on my shoulder. Sarutobi sighed. This version of Naruto is calmer, smarter. I miss the old Naruto. He thought. So, you have Ed's memories. Not all of them, old man. Just his alchemic knowledge, and some of his emotions at the times. I don't have everything. He looked down at his outfit. Well, a better fashion sense, I suppose. Sarutobi nodded in agreement. Naruto had slipped out of Konoha unnoticed and made it to the nearby trade town during the week. The results were an improvement. Sarutobi had not been impressed with the patrols around the village, and after Naruto told him how he'd slipped out, he had corrected it earlier in the week. He also gave Naruto a travel pass, and warned all those that watched the gate if they cause him any hassle they would be doing latrine duty for the next 50 years. Well, I want Eboshi to check you over. He held up a hand to stall an argument, and continued. We shall monitor you to make sure there are no adverse effects. Naruto sighed and nodded. Yeah, I can get that. What are you going to do, Naruto? Sarutobi asked him. I need time to study alchemy. What about your ninja career? Sarutobi asked. With the new arm you can return to classes. Naruto sighed. I've got the scrolls and lessons you got me. If I could study independently, and take the final. You know, you'll be ranked bottom of the class, no matter how you perform, due to attendance issues. Naruto nodded. I know. But if I don't learn about my abilities, I could end up blowing up all of Konoha with a snap of my fingers. Sarutobi was putting his pipe up about to light it when Naruto snapped his fingers and a spark leapt from his gloved hand. Poof. The spark was too much, leaving the Hokage with a melted pipe and a soot-covered face and smoldering beard and robes. Heh, heh, sorry OG-san. Naruto said, scratching the back of his neck. I need to practice that too. Sarutobi pulled out his melted pipe and looked at the blonde before him. I'll get you a private training field to use. Until then, try not to use your abilities unless under dire circumstances. Sarutobi knew that if attacked now, Naruto could wipe out a large area of Konoha. The power of flames, Naruto, you truly do embody the will of fire. The old man chuckled at his own humor. XX. Oh my. Eboshi said as she studied the new arm and the tattoos on the young man before her. Hey, quit gawking at me, you old hag. Naruto said, crossing his arms. Gawking at you? Why would I eye a scrawny little brat like you? Eboshi said as she prodded him. I am not a runt, you vile vicious hag. Those spots on your face could be used as a road map to the Fire Lord's Bordello, MMMPH. Naruto's rant was cut short as Sarutobi covered his mouth, seeing Eboshi developing a tick above her right eye and looked like she was going to pummel the blonde. Remember your healer's oath, Eboshi. He said, as she looked ready to cause Naruto serious harm. She turned and counted to 200. Sarutobi looked at Naruto after he removed his hand from covering the blonde's mouth. I see you have acquired a new temperament, he observed, and Naruto shrugged. Ed said there would be some bleed over, emotional responses. Sadly, it seems I got his issues with height, added to my own, Naruto sighed. I'm going to be doing a lot more meditating. Sarutobi smiled at this. Well, meditation is good for balancing your chakra, as well as organizing your thoughts and emotions. Iboshi pulled out a needle and Naruto was in the air, flipped backwards and had his back to the wall. Where are you going with that mini sword? Now Naruto, it's not a sword. You are due for your vitamin shot. I also decided that while I have you here, I'll make sure your vaccinations are up to date as well as a tetanus shot. Ah, hell no, Naruto said. I got a shot. He slid along the wall heading for the door, but Iboshi seemed to teleport and appeared there, slamming it shut and sealing it with a heavy warding jutsu. Naruto narrowed his eyes and saw the door to the office open, with an open window. With a fox-like grin, he fainted right then, zigzagged around the Hokage and rushed to the office and freedom. He got one foot on the windowsill and was mid-leap when a slender hand grabbed him by his ankle and dragged him back in, screaming. The window slammed shut and bars appeared over them. People on the streets below heard several screams, and some heard a woman's dark, sinister laughter. XX. Naruto, standing in the Hokage's office hours later rubbing his butt, he glared at Iboshi, who sat to the side sipping her tea while humming. Sarutobi was trying hard not to laugh and set the blonde off. Thankfully he forgot he could use alchemy. The Hokage thought. Now that you've been checked out, I wanted to talk with you about where you live. Naruto sulked and glared at Iboshi a moment more, then nodded. I wanted to show you where, and ask you about some of the seals I was reading about. How far have you read? Sarutobi asked. Naruto scratched his head. Well, Naruto. How far have you read? The Hokage asked. Naruto sighed and he formed a rapid series of hand seals, and with a poof 20 Narutos filled the office. You really should lock up your office at night, Oji-san. I read the scroll back there and learned the Kage Bunshin in less than 3 hours. After that, he looked down. I sorta read everything you gave me and I've got most of it memorized now. I'm still learning most of it. Well, the shadow clones are while I'm here, and annoying Ed. Sarutobi looked at the 20 Kage Bunshin and sighed. Naruto. Sorry, Oji-san. Naruto. Iboshi said, getting his attention. That tattoo on your left arm, where did you get that? It wasn't there earlier in the week. I swear if some idiot in Tanzuka town did it, I will castrate him for giving someone your age. Easy there, Iboshi-bachan. Naruto said, ignoring the tick above her eye. The tattoo came with the ritual. It is a gift from the gates of alchemy. Or one of the denizens of the gate, a past alchemist user. He rubbed his left arm with his right hand and sighed. A man from Ed's time when he was human, called Scar, bore a similar mark. Ed, when he saw this, told me about him. He received the arm when his brother died. It's a rare transmutation circle that allowed him to kill state alchemists. I won't go into his whole history, but the markings make the arm an incomplete philosopher's stone. He had the ability of decomposition. He could use it to transmute objects or living beings. He stopped at the second step, deconstruction or decomposition. He was famous for grabbing a person by their head and blowing their brains out the back of their skull. Both the Hokage and Doctor looked shocked. Naruto sighed. And the sad thing is that it's not the worst ability I gained. Explain please, Naruto. The Hokage asked. Sigh, from what I can understand, I gained several abilities. Scars with my left arm. Ed's skills in alchemy. His brothers, Alphonse, Sigh, all need to check. But Al had the ability to animate suits of armor with his soul divide technique, not something I'm looking forward to. Naruto looked at the tea and Iboshi poured him a cup. Naruto sipped it slowly before continuing. I might have been given gifts, from the 7. The what? Iboshi asked when it looked like Naruto wasn't going to speak anymore. Sigh, 7 homunculi, artificially created beings. They had human forms and mental capabilities, but they all lacked souls. Homunculi are the product of attempted human transmutation. On initial creation, they do not possess human features, but rather look like decayed beings, organ piles, bones at odd angles or examples of what they looked like. Naruto said. He was pulling on Ed's knowledge now and it unnerved him how easily it flowed. They fed on incomplete philosopher's stones to gain shape, as in the form of the person they were to resurrect it as. They have numerous abilities with regeneration and they are nearly immortal, but by no means thus, as they are tied to the stones they need to sustain their life. Naruto sipped his tea before continuing, his eyes focusing on the edge of the desk rather than look up to meet the eyes of the two-person audience. Due to their diet of the red stones as they were dubbed, all the homunculi possess a regenerative ability that allowed them to return from even utter annihilation. They had monstrous strength and agility, and each one was gifted with a paranormal power that was unique for each of them. How awful, Eboshi whispered and Naruto nodded. Due to the imitation of life, they were weakened by the presence of the real thing. Meaning if they were brought into close proximity with the remains of the one they looked like, they would be weakened to the point of paralysis if close enough. The only way to kill them according to Ed's memory is to make sure they have no red stones in them, and the only way to do that would be to trap them in the flammel array, or keep killing it until it exhausted its red stone reserves and can no longer regenerate the damage. Sarutobi cleared his throat when Naruto stopped speaking. And you believe you gained abilities from them? Ed thinks I gained their powers, not their curse as I have my soul. He gave the old man a soft smile. And as Eboshi Bachan will attest, I heal at my normal rate, well with the healing factor I possessed before my first attempt. First and last, Eboshi said. Sorry, can't. The gate's been opened, I can't ignore my responsibilities to it, or to Ed and myself. Eboshi looked like she was going to argue, but the Hokage held up a hand. Back to the topic. What abilities from these homunculi do you think you gained? Naruto sighed louder this time. Well, from lust, I gained the ability to turn my fingertips into razor-sharp blades. He pulled off his gloves and showed them his metal hand that now had blades from the fingertips. I'll find out if I can use them like the memories show of her ultimate lance technique. I already can form Ed's sword. Naruto showed them clapping his hands together and running it over the forearm of his metal arm and a blade extended past his hand. But back to the homunculi powers. Gluttony. I think I should be able to eat or consume anything without ill effects, but I'm not sure I want to test that ability. He also was known to be quite quick and powerful. I think the Akamichi are similar to him in some ways. Naruto sipped his tea. Envy. Naruto closed his eyes and winced. Envy was able to shape-shift into anyone he saw, mimicking them in every way from voice to actions. He was also known to shift his limbs into blades and was known as the cruelest of the homunculi. I don't believe I have his or Gluttony's abilities, it doesn't feel like it, but I could be wrong without study. Naruto said with a shrug before continuing. Sloth. She was a hydrokinetic, meaning she could control water. Naruto looked to the pitcher and they watched as the liquid in it snaked up and formed several shapes before splashing back into the pitcher. And it seems I have her gift. I think mainly cause she was the resurrection of Ed and Al's mother. Naruto closed his eyes. She was their sin. He said softly. Shaking his head he looked back at the Hokage. I also believe I have Greed's ability. He was dubbed the ultimate shield by Dante. He could rearrange the bonds between the carbon atoms in his body to make his skin into an unnamed carbon substance. Naruto pulled out a kunai and tried to ram it into his heart. Both Eboshi and Sarutobi screamed and stopped seeing the blade snap. Naruto sighed and nodded. Yep, I have his ability, at least I won't turn into a black-skinned demon with it like he did. He muttered the last bit under his breath. Wrath is next, and since he got his abilities from Ed's limbs I know I don't have his skills. I don't think I have Pride's ultimate eye which is similar to the Hyuga's Byakugan. Naruto said thanking Kami he had nothing from those two as Wrath brought a ton of emotional and mental conflict with his Edward memories, and Pride's eye just freaked him out. And as OG-san saw I have Roy Mustang's pyrokinetic ability. He smiled as the old man was lighting his pipe and moved it away quickly. I don't want you using any of those abilities until you are properly trained in them. The Hokage warned. Naruto nodded. Ed's working on a schedule. I'll be using the gate pass to leave Konoha for periods as some of the things I want to try would be dangerous in populated areas. Hell, some of Ed's attacks were just as destructive. While he did prefer creating edged weapons, when provoked he would create a cannon or bangers. Bangers? Eboshi asked. Grenades more destructive than 100 exploding tags, well depending if he was pissed off or not. Naruto thought. The three sat in silence. It was the Hokage who spoke finally. Naruto, I want to make you a special operative of Konoha. He looked at the boy who nodded. Ed and I figured you would since I'm not going to the academy, you're using my skills where you can to make Konoha better. The Hokage looked sadly at the boy before him. I really miss the old Naruto who you could lie to even a white lie without him seeing the forest for the trees. Sigh, I will make you Konoha's alchemist, answerable only to the Hokage. However, I will need to team you up with someone. Before you go doing that, Oji-san, what will my duties entail? Naruto asked. I'm glad you asked. You and your partner will get Sannin travel rights. Your duties will vary from special forces, intelligence, interrogation, research, police force actions. Naruto groaned. Great, it is the duties of a state alchemist all over again. He muttered. Might as well mark me down under the title of Konoha's Fullmetal Fox Alchemist then, Oji-san, Kami hates me. He muttered, thinking Ed was going to flip being press-ganged into service again. Hey, I think Kami hates him more. Yes, well then. The Hokage looked at the boy before him. Who do I pair you with, Naruto? So, partner? Naruto asked. How about Eboshi said and looked at the Hokage, motion for her to continue. Well, you hold a tournament between Jonin, Chunin and even Genin to let Naruto see who has what skills and make his own choice. He will have to work with this person after all. Both Hokage and Alchemist shared a look. Why didn't I think of that? They both thought as Eboshi poured another cup of tea. Now, you can show us where you live, Naruto, and Naruto groaned as the doctor ignored him as she went on, saying it would need a woman's touch most likely. Naruto shot a look at the Hokage, who just smiled at him and mouthed, go along, it saves time. Kami, you suck. Naruto thought, which he followed up with, I hope Ed's not licking his crotch again. Well, Eboshi looked around the remodeled sewer den. Not my first choice, she muttered. Well, I sealed the sewer way off, only I can open it. Same with the door, it will only be able to open with an alchemic ability. Naruto said as he walked down the stairs. Hey, Ed, Eboshi Ba-chan and Oji-san are here. You better not be doing anything perverted. Naruto finished. He wished he could get the mental image of Ed cleaning himself out of his mind, but his newer mental capabilities made that impossible with the photographic memory. I'm not doing anything, kid. A squeaky voice said, and Eboshi saw the two-tailed fox. Both Naruto and the Hokage winced as she made a squeak sound and scooped up the fox and cradled it in her arms, began to scratch his belly. Oh, aren't you just the most precious thing? She said, and Naruto swallowed his snicker as he saw Ed's hind leg pumping air and the dazed look on the fox's face as he zoned out to the sheer pleasure of a woman scratching his belly. As you can see, Oji-san, Ed's not the size of the tower. Naruto said. The aged Hokage looked around the den as Naruto called it and saw that it was cleaner than he expected. Naruto shrugged. I had a week. Sarutobi looked and saw the bookshelf filled with scrolls and books. He read some of the titles and whistled. Some of these works were thought lost back before the First Great War. Naruto didn't say anything. He was watching the doctor act like a teenage girl with the fox in her arms. I'll never be able to take him seriously now, not after seeing this. The blonde thought. Naruto showed them his bed, and the new mattress that the Hokage had bought, along with items that the Hokage recognized that looked brand new. Seeing his look, Naruto spoke up. I sort of played around fixing things after I woke up. Just to make sure I understood what I was doing. Smooth lie, and Oji-san can see it a mile off. But it's best if they don't know Ed can still use alchemy for now. Sarutobi was going to call him on it, but decided that Naruto was allowed privacy, just like anyone else. I see you managed to get a fridge, stove and microwave working down here. Naruto smiled. Yeah, once I was able to use alchemy, the first thing I did was take the ones you had and seal up and fix them up like new. Eboshi, still cradling Ed, opened the fridge and growled as she checked the cabinets next. We are going shopping, she said, rounding on the blonde alchemist. Against her chest, Ed chuckled. Told you, he muttered, before her fingers started petting him once more, and Naruto smiled, watched the bane of Konoha whimper and pump his legs at getting petted. What's wrong with what I have? Naruto asked, crossing his arms. It's nothing but ramen, Eboshi snarled. So, Sarutobi was glancing over a book he pulled from the shelf by the desk and winced at the argument. He knew how much the boy loved ramen, but seriously, it wouldn't kill him to eat something more nutritious. Because it will stunt your growth, and if you keep an unbalanced diet, it will prevent you from growing bigger than a garden gnome. Eboshi teed off on Naruto. Sarutobi winced hearing her go after the boy's height, and he could have sworn he heard a fox growl before it became a mule, and he turned to see Eboshi squeezing the plushy-sized Kyuubi being smothered against Eboshi's well-endowed chest. She's smaller than Tsunade, but not much, and is that fox blushing? The third Hokage thought as he fought to keep a nosebleed from happening. I am bigger than a garden gnome, you melon-chested old hag. Naruto fired back and was getting a win to go on when the Hokage cut them both off. Naruto, you will help me judge the Chunin and Jonin to see who you can work with and who you will feel comfortable with Monday. Naruto rounded. What? Why? It was the smothered Ed that answered, as he managed to pull his head back from the ample bosom. So we don't get stuck with one of those idiots that think you're Midori. Naruto sulked. I was going to head out for a few days. Not alone. The Hokage said. I don't care if they sit there and watch you meditate, you will have a partner, someone who will need to know your skills and about your fuzzy partner. Partner? Ed asked as Eboshi finally released him as she went and was writing a list of foods and supplies Naruto would need. Yeah, hey, it's Naruto and by extension yourself are Konoha's alchemist. The Hokage said, seeing Naruto wasn't going to say it and try to fluff it off. Konoha's alchemist. The fox said, walking towards Naruto. Hey, yeah, it's like state alchemist, we only answer to the Hokage as it's just me, and you, Naruto said, taking a step back for each one Ed took closer. And it's not like we have a hunt for a philosopher's stone. We'll be spending a lot of it training until the old man approves, right Oji-san? You say something, Naruto. The third asked as he was reading a passage in the book he had and zoned out, not realizing he just used one of Kakashi's excuses. He watched as the plushy-sized Kyuubi leapt and Naruto's screams of, not the face. Not the face. Which soon turned to, not there. Not there. Kami, I want children someday. Aghhhhhh. Eboshi and Sarutobi watched the strange one-sided fight with sweat drops and wide eyes. XX. Naruto followed along beside Eboshi as they were in the market town a mile from Konoha. The Hokage had to return to his office and Ed was currently in an alchemy-made pet cage back at the den with a muzzle. Naruto's bite marks and scratches had healed, but he was not happy with the tiny buzzsaw that was the Kyuubi. Sheesh, you figure a guy lives millennia wouldn't be so sensitive or picky. Naruto mumbled as he carried the bags of groceries. Eboshi had a handcart filled with food and dishes. Eboshi ignored his mumbling as she picked out fresh fruit and vegetables. You will eat the meals I marked down, or I will be cooking and force-feeding you. The Hokage's personal doctor said when she saw Naruto scowling at the broccoli. Whatever. Naruto grumbled. He watched her add a gallon of milk. I don't want milk. What? Where did that? Ed. I really need to meditate to separate these feelings. I like milk. Naruto thought when he caught the complaint. You'll take the milk and drink it. Eboshi said, rounding on him. Naruto nodded. Man, I really don't want to tick her off too much. She might decide I need another shot of some kind. Naruto shuddered as he remembered the number of needles she stuck him with during his examination. Injecting things and then the ones to take blood. Doctors have to be part vampire. Naruto thought. Our former masters of interrogation. Kami, I'd have told her anything near the end there. The blonde thought and managed to stop himself from rubbing his posterior that had taken a lot of needles in a short amount of time. They were finally done and walking back to Konoha. We'll go again next Saturday, or sooner once we figure out your metabolic rate of consumption. Eboshi said, pushing the handcart ahead of her. Naruto nodded. Eboshi Ba-chan. He finally said. Yes, Naruto. She said. Do you think, Sai, will I ever be accepted in Konoha, or am I deluding myself? The doctor winced. I'm not sure, Naruto. People change their opinions all the time. Know that no matter what, you will have I and Sarutobi, and there are others around that admire and respect you for who and what you are, Naruto. The blonde nodded. So, your arm, it functions like a normal arm? She asked after a couple minutes of silence. Naruto realized the older woman hated long quiet moments. Oh, yeah, I even have sensations of touch with it. But at the same time it's unbreakable and I can't explain it, but to my mind it doesn't feel wrong. Eboshi reached out and Naruto turned, feeling the touch. Fascinating. Shame that it's a lost art, she said as they continued walking. There are ninjas who had to quit after they lost an arm or leg. Naruto sighed. From Ed's memories of his time as a human, automail was very common. They had automail mechanics all over the world, but he would only trust Grandma Rockbell and her granddaughter, who Ed had a huge crush on. He smiled. But Ed was too much of a coward and hid behind his studies. Naruto smiled. Then it faded. When he and his brother were stuck on this side of the gates, he fell in love for a time. She died and Ed never really recovered after that. Naruto didn't want to touch those memories. With meditation during the week he'd sealed nearly all of them away. Eboshi was shocked the more she learned about the Kyuubi's past. He's not a soulless, heartless demon. He's an old soul who's seen and lost too much, she thought. The massive gates of Konoha came into view, and noticed Naruto veering off. Oi, brat, where you going? Secret entrance. Come on, it will save hassle. Hassle? Eboshi asked. Yeah, those strange Anbu with the root symbol are watching the gate. I'd rather avoid them, as there were a few in the crowd when I lost my arm. Naruto explained. Eboshi followed him to a rock formation and watched as he slapped his hands together, and a moment later a door appeared in the ground leading underground. What? Naruto chuckled. Ed's got tunnels running all over Konoha. Come on, he said, and taking the cart led it down. He resealed it a moment later and it was never seen by the curious root operatives who left the gates to look for the demon brat like their lord asked them to. XX. The weekend passed with Naruto lost in study, and Ed driving him to learn and master his basics quickly. A finger snap sent the chibi fox scampering away from the flame attacks that Naruto was getting better at as he realized late Saturday night that it was focus and will that directed the flames. Between his alchemic studies, Naruto created several clones to work on his ninja skills. Ed would toss out comments and corrections in fighting styles. The Kyuubi noted that Naruto used several styles and it dawned on the fox that they were his, Al's, and Roy's fighting styles along with a few he didn't know. He knew he wasn't ready for using any of the higher ranked ninjutsus or genjutsus, but truthfully he could mimic most of them with alchemy now. Naruto's Sunday was spent having breakfast with Sarutobi and Eboshi at the Hokage's clan house where Naruto met baby Konohamaru for the first time. Sadly Ed didn't like the kid as the toddler latched onto his tails and pulled hard. Naruto met with Asuma, who had returned from his duties to the daimyo's court and was to be reinstated as a jonin. So, Pop says you're going to help him judge a tournament tomorrow. Asuma said as he and Naruto were watching Konohamaru crawl after Ed. Asuma had been unnerved by the fox at first sight, and a talking fox had him on his feet. It had taken 30 minutes to calm him down. Yeah, Naruto said smiling as the fox leapt out of the 2-year-old's reach, only to have Konohamaru laugh and get to his feet and chase again. You know what it's about? Asuma asked. Yeah, Asuma chuckled as he lit a cigarette. His mother had forbidden smoking in the house, so even after her passing his father had enforced it. Even though he smoked, he would do so outside on the porch and expected guests and his own children to follow his example. It have something to do with the fact you have a new arm? Asuma asked. He'd been at Jonin headquarters when the report had come in and several Jonin had been bragging about the demon brat no longer having the use of his arm. Needless to say Asuma had gotten them to Ibiki quickly. Yeah, Naruto said. He wasn't sure what to say to the man. Asuma, just ask him already. Sarutobi said, joining them on the porch and lighting his pipe. Eboshi was sitting on the glider with a cup of tea. What's going on? Asuma asked. Ask the old man. Naruto said with a smirk as he watched Konohamaru grab the twin tails and yank the Kyuubi back towards him, laughing as the fox tried to dig into the ground with his tiny paws. Naruto snorted. Man, if the villagers ever saw the great and terrible Kyuubi no Kitsune like this, I think they'd pass out laughing. Eboshi laughed into her tea and the Hokage smiled. Pop? Asuma asked. Naruto gained a bloodline recently. He's got an ability he's going to be training up and he won't be in the academy. But he is under my command. He is Konoha's alchemist ninja. Tomorrow we will choose a partner for him. They will have various tasks and missions. Why won't he be in the academy? My bloodline works better if I study on my own. With Ed no longer messing up my chakra, well. Naruto walked past him and then up the side of the house. And my chakra reserves are limitless. Oji-san gave me scrolls to study, and he'll evaluate me on my progress once a month. So having me sit in boring lectures would be useless as I can use that time to work on my bloodline. Alchemist. What is that? Naruto smirked, made a show of using a few useless hand signs as Ed and he had talked about hiding it in plain sight. Then he clapped his hands together, slammed them onto the porch, and a minute later there was a wood copy of Asuma looking at him. Mock. No. Sarutobi said, cutting his son off. Naruto can transform one thing into another shape and form. As long as there is something equivalent in the exchange. I can't make a paperclip into a kunai as there isn't enough mass, but with enough I can. Heck. Naruto reached out and touched the wood clone and it shimmered and melted back to the porch. With enough materials, I could duplicate the whole village if given time. Asuma felt the cigarette slipping and closed his mouth. Any Jonin or Chunin can apply? He asked and Sarutobi nodded. Ibiki was curious and even entered. Sarutobi said, "You told?" Naruto asked. "I told them I was looking for a partner for a true prodigy. I explained the first year would be just you training and getting to know your partner, but then the missions would begin." Naruto sighed. "You didn't tell them who?" "Yes, I did. Many of them are interested to see what you can do. I have several Anbu who know and respect you asking to partake as well." "Really?" "Yes," Sarutobi said as he put a hand on Naruto's shoulder. "It will be fine, Naruto." Asuma smirked. "I think I'll give it a shot." Naruto snorted. "You wouldn't be allowed to smoke with me." "Oh, and you think you'd be able to make me quit when my own father the Hokage can't?" Asuma taunted. Naruto reached out and grabbed the cigarette. "This is your lungs," he said and then snapped his fingers. The cigarette was ashes in the wind. "That's your lungs if you smoke around me again. It stinks, and with my enhanced senses I don't need the stench. Oji-san at least smokes flavored tobacco that isn't as vile." Asuma looked at his father. "Cherry," the old man said as he puffed on his pipe. "And if I smoked something flavored, I would leave you alone. But that burning leaf smell is vile." Naruto said. Eboshi and he had talked about his senses after the grocery trip back at the den as they unpacked the food. "Ag, let me go. Naruto. Heal PP." The three adults and one young blonde alchemist laughed as Konohamaru was now biting Ed's tail. The chibi fox had a panicked and pained look on its face. Yuck. Konohamaru. Spit that out, you don't know where he's been." Naruto said. "FCKU Naruto." Ed said. "You." Konohamaru mimicked and the adults all scowled at the fox while Naruto groaned. "That is not my fault. The stadium below the Hokage Tower was used in days of old to test the upper ranks of ninja without letting anyone see but the Hokage. The gathered Jonin, Chunin and Anbu were having a grand time. It gave them a chance to spar to impress the Hokage, and to see how others they knew were developing. The Hokage had one rule that applied to those with the Sharingan. No copying of Konoha loyal ninja techniques without permission. At the appointed time, Sarutobi along with Eboshi, Naruto and a fox on his shoulder entered the cage's viewing booth. "Whoa. There are a lot of them." Naruto muttered seeing 72 gathered ninja. He was wearing black cargo pants, a navy blue shirt under his red trench coat. "Damn Ed's memories. I can't even wear orange anymore." The blonde thought. His hair was spiked and his hands were covered in white gloves with alchemic circles on the back. Around his waist was a belt with several kunai holsters, but the most important thing was the new pocket watch. Ed had talked with the Hokage who had it made in one of the shops. On one side was the spiraling leaf symbol, on the other was a fox logo. But what was inside, inscribed by the Hokage for Naruto, was what was important. Naruto had taken the back off after reading the engraving and added a series of seals he'd read in some of the scrolls. It would make it indestructible and another that would keep it going no matter what. Sarutobi put a hand on Naruto's shoulder, opposite of the two-tailed fox. "You don't have to pick the winner here, Naruto, just the one you think you can work with." Naruto nodded and to the surprise of many pulled out a flip notebook and a pen. He took a seat at the rail. Sarutobi smiled at him. "I want to thank you all for coming here on such short notice. This tournament is to display your skills so that Naruto here can determine best who will be his partner in a new special division that will be answerable only to the Hokage. If you don't feel that you can work with Naruto, I ask you to leave now." A couple of the Chunin did, and Eboshi put a hand on Naruto's shoulder, but he wasn't surprised. "Very well. Now then, nothing lethal is to be used. When I call a match over, you will stop. The gathered ninja agreed. Now all of you fill out your names and it will be entered into the randomizer that will pick the matches. Naruto watched. He noted that some wore jonin vests over their regular clothes. Close to a uniform, but at least we'll be able to pick and choose how we dress. The blonde thought. He saw the first names pop up on the board. Ibiki Morino versus Hiro Chono. Several jonin and chunin around the room patted Chono on his shoulder as he entered the arena against the head of the interrogation department. Oh yeah, Ibiki's going to enjoy this. Naruto thought, remembering the few times he'd seen the man while spending time with the Hokage. The fight started and Naruto winced at the wicked bolo punch Ibiki opened up with. Wonder if their health insurance is paid up. XX. Ibiki's destruction of the high-ranked Chunin took only a few moments. The head of the interrogation department made it look easy and had used only taijutsu to do it. A pair of Chunin were next and Naruto fought the urge to yawn as they were using basic taijutsu and low-level ninjutsus. I've seen tougher fights passing the academy while running from them. Naruto thought, making notes. Eboshi had no constraints and yawned loudly. Eboshi Ba-chan, that's not polite. Naruto whispered back to her without taking his eyes off the fight. The Hokage's personal doctor moved to a seat next to him and saw his eyes watching each movement that Chunin made. What are you doing? It was Ed who answered lowly. Kid's learning, adding to his style. How is he learning? Eboshi asked. Photographic memory. Naruto said. I've always had one, but always played dumber. With the boost I got I can't avoid it any longer. His eyes taking in the movements below. His guard is too high. Naruto. Ed hissed. It is. Naruto said to his fox companion and they both winced when the dark-haired Chunin connected with a spinning knee strike to the other one's chest and knocked him out. Told you. They watched several more fights. Eboshi teased Naruto when he blushed at seeing Anko Midarashi's attire as she put down a Chunin named Mizuki with a serpent style of taijutsu mixed with liberal use of kunai and summon snakes. So, your girlfriend looks to be near the top of the list. Eboshi teased Naruto, who scowled. Not my girlfriend Ba-chan, but she has great potential to be my partner. Naruto said as a pair of Anbu were using swords and taijutsu. The one in a dog mask sent the one in the sparrow mask's sword away and then sheathed his own and they continued with taijutsu and started mixing in ninjutsu. What do you think, Naruto? Sarutobi asked from his other side. I don't think the Anbu will make my list, Oji-san. He said. Can I ask why? Naruto nodded with a sigh. I don't know if I can trust them. I've seen the one in the dog mask watching me when the mobs formed and he did nothing. The sparrow one I think incited the one 2 months ago. And the ones with those marks for root used me as a demonstration for some of their younger members. Sarutobi growled. I will destroy Danzo. That man was ordered to disband that group and stay away from Naruto. The dog-masked Anbu hit a series of strikes followed by a low-level lightning jutsu that left his opponent twitching on the ground. Next up, a woman came out. She had a feral look about her. Naruto saw her with 3 dogs. Are those allowed, Oji-san? Naruto asked. Yes. Inuzuka clan members have a special bond with their dogs. Ninja dogs are considered tools of the ninja and thus allowed, just like Anko was able to use snakes, or the Ambarame use their bugs. The Hokage explained. Naruto made notes on his pad. He watched Hana Inuzuka work with her dogs like a well-oiled machine. What do you think, Ed? He whispered to the fox on his shoulder. I don't think she'll judge us. The fox said. Naruto watched as the 3 dogs dug underground while Hana was locked in a taijutsu fight. She backflipped out of the way as all 3 dogs came from below, one grabbing an arm, another a leg, and the third had the Chunin by his crotch. Give her, they'll use you like a squeeze toy. The feral woman said. The opponent nodded quickly, too afraid to speak. Naruto made a series of marks and smiled. Hana Inuzuka, Anko Mitrashi and Ibiki Morino are the best ones I think I can work with so far. Naruto thought. Over the next hour he marked down several more possibilities. Kurenai Yuhi a Chunin, an Anbu captain named Itachi Uchiha, another Chunin Gekko Hayate, a retired Jonin Shikaku Nara who came to escape another clan meeting that he called too troublesome to talk about. Well, Naruto? The Hokage asked as the last of the preliminaries finished up with a pair of Chunin, Azumo and Katetsu, who Naruto thought were too playful at something that should be serious, but he liked them outside of that. I have 8 picked 8. I would like to see more before I make a decision, OG-san. He handed the Hokage the list. Interesting mix of styles, abilities. The old man muttered as he puffed on his pipe. Standing, he looked at the gathered competitors, some sporting bandages and showing signs of fatigue. I want to thank all of you for coming once again. If I read your name, please remain behind for the final 8. The rest of you I ask to leave as the finals will be private. Muttering from many who were already lost told the Hokage that they didn't agree with this. Silence. Now, as I was saying before, the final 8 will gather here. He indicated a spot to the right of the room. Ibiki Marino. The Hokage read. Eboshi stood with Naruto, both watching the rest of the group. The head of the interrogation department and Special Jonin took his spot off to the side, his face remaining expressionless. Kurenai Yuhi. The red-eyed Chunin looked amazed at being selected, but took her place next to Ibiki. Hana Inazuka. Yes. Take that, you lazy bastards. The Chunin said and moved with her dogs to the side. She had a huge grin on her face, the red marks catching Naruto's eyes. Shikaku Nara. Surprised muttering as one of the legendary Ino Shika Cho members stepped up. Ain't he retired? Was heard more than once again as the head of the Nara family stepped up next to Hana. Itachi Uchiha. The Hokage said, and the unmasked captain of an Anbu squad stepped up. 13-year-old Itachi actually smirked as he took his place. Anko Mitarashi. The snake mistress stepped forward and several of the Chunin stepped back as Ibiki's apprentice and partner made her way forward. Naruto smirked at that. Dangerous and beautiful, what a kunoichi should be. He'd read some of the reports in the old books and he knew a woman could be even more dangerous than any man, and he knew that from Ed's partial memories he'd gotten. Gecko Hayate. The Hokage intoned. The Chunin made his way forward, coughing every so often. I wonder if that's a real cough, or is it something to draw others in? Naruto had wondered and remembered how Hayate had drawn his opponent with a coughing fit and had the man on his back with a sword aimed at his neck in a second. The Hokage looked at the last name, then turned to look at Naruto. Are you sure? Many in the room were surprised that the Hokage was asking a 8-year-old's opinion. Hi, Naruto said. Dr. Eboshi Duku. What? Naruto smirked at the woman. You hit harder than any of them, Eboshi Ba-chan. Naruto said, leaping from the cage box to the arena below, surrounded by Chunin, Jonin and Anbu. I am no longer a field doctor, you snot. The Hokage's personal doctor snarled, looking down at him. During his move, Ed had stayed on his shoulder. Both were looking up and she and the Hokage swore they gave her a cheesy fox-like grin. Those not selected, I thank you for your being here, and know you've brought pride to Konoha. Naruto stood facing the final 8, his eyes ignoring the rest. Eboshi came down and slapped him across the back of the head. I'm not fighting. Of course not. Naruto said with a grin. Clapping his hands together, the Hokage and Eboshi tensed as a suit of armor rose from the ground. He is. Naruto smiled as the 7 ninja of various rank looked at the armored form. This will be Eboshi Ba-chan's stand-in. He explained. He winked at the Hokage. Took me nearly all weekend with the use of Kage Bunshin to get this right. He admitted to the Hokage. Naruto. He said, shaking his head. You can make Kage Bunshins, why are you trying to learn this? He asked. The professor always wanted to learn, and the blonde before him was opening whole new worlds. Naruto shrugged. It's a gift, and I need to know how to use it, OG-san. Besides, this is a lot more durable in combat and will last more than a couple of hard hits. The 8 selected listen in as the short blonde talks with the Hokage. Besides, do you really think I'd let Eboshi Ba-chan come to any kind of harm? She'd stick me with a dozen needles again. Oi, brat, Eboshi said. Vampire. The blonde fired back. Sarutobi sighed. Children. He mock scolded, getting 2 tongues stuck out at him. Rolling his eyes, he continued. Now then, since this is Naruto's call, I'll let him explain this next stage. Slacker Hokage. The blonde muttered as he stepped forward. Alright, I'm sure you can all pound the snot out of me, and as we got to see, you have no problems beating on other ninja. He clasped his hands behind his back and paced before them. Once again, Sarutobi was reminded of himself when he was instructing. However, this steel golem is up to the task, and I want each of you to fight against it. From there I will pick the final 2 who will of course go at it. He smirked, and the Hokage felt a moment of dread. Well then, let's see how you handle Big Al here. He said, patting the armor that shifted, and then to the surprise of everyone held up a steel-covered hand. Hello. A hollow voice said, sounding like a child's. The fox on Naruto's shoulder looked freaked. How the hell? All eyes turned to look at the two-tailed fox, many eyes wide. Way to go, Ed. Naruto groaned, palming his face and sighing. Everyone, meet Ed. The fox hopped from his shoulder and stepped forward. Hey. Hana Inazuka was the first. A talking fox. Is it because of? She looked at the Hokage. No. The Kyuubi is no more. Ed here is a companion like your family has with the dogs, Naruto has with the foxes. The old man explained. Eboshi ruined it by picking up the two-tailed fox and cradled it against her. Ain't he just the cutest thing? Snickers were heard and Naruto heard Ed's growl and decided to save the big bad ninja from the mini fox buzzsaw. Moving on. Al here will test your abilities, you can go all out and. What do you mean all out, brother? The suit of armor explained, and Naruto swore the empty eye sockets went white with fear, and the steel face, which was expressionless, showed fear and concern. What the hell? But Ed's memories show that Al could do that too when he was bonded to the armor, but this isn't. Man, I wish I knew how Al did this when he created the armors later on. Too many unanswered questions. Naruto thought. He looked at Ed, who was lost to the world of belly rubs and cuddling. Overgrown plushie. He muttered. You get to fight them all one-on-one, and they use everything they know to destroy you. What? Why would you do that to me? The armor whined. Naruto sighed. Al, just get in there and fight, or I'll tell Ed about your fantasies about winery. Naruto hissed. The armor froze then. Meanie. Then the armor moved into the middle of the arena and took up a ready position. What the hell? Naruto thought. Did the gates do something like this? The armor didn't behave like that before when I got it to work. Shaking his head, Naruto went to the sidelines. Ibiki was it. You want first crack? He asked the head of the interrogation unit. Sure. The imposing man said as he stepped into the arena. Brother. The armor squeaked out as Ibiki stood across from it. Kick his Al. Ed said, and then melted as Eboshi got a really sensitive spot on his belly that he could never reach, and everyone heard the mewling sound come from the fox. Fight. The Hokage said after looking at Naruto, who nodded. Ibiki came in with a lunging front kick. The armor blocked easy and went to hit the interrogator with a series of rights or lefts, backing him off in order to avoid. Naruto. Sarutobi questioned. What's up, OG-san? He asked, not taking his gaze off the fight below. Is that armor sentient? Sort of. It's got a soul shard, a piece of my soul powering it. I think it pulled on the memories I got of Alphonse from Ed to craft its personality. Naruto winced as Ibiki used a Earth-style battering ram attack to lift the armor off the ground, then connect with a spin kick, sending it into the arena wall. I'm not sure really, and neither is Ed. It's going to take me some time to figure out the abilities I got, even longer to master them. The Hokage hummed as the armor got up, only to be wrapped in mono wire. What? The hollow, innocent voice asked before Ibiki unleashed an attack he created. Welcome to the Shredder, kid. Ibiki said, and everyone watched as the mono wire sliced the armor to pieces. Naruto stopped the match and announced Ibiki the winner. It's hollow. Anko said, looking inside the remains. She looked at Naruto. How? Win and find out. He said as he slapped his hands together, then touched the armor, which glowed, and then to the surprise of everyone was once more in one piece. How you doing, Al? Naruto asked. Okay. But that man was mean, brother. The childlike voice came from the armor, and Anko looked uneasy hearing it. It's a soul shard, learned through alchemy. He noticed her rubbing her neck and backing up. Naruto. The Hokage pulled him out of his thoughts. Right. He patted the armor's shoulder. Up next, Itachi Uchiha. The Anbu squad captain wasn't much older than Naruto. He's 14. Hell, Hana's only 15. She's 7 years older than me, and Anko looks to be 16. A lot of talent here. The Uchiha prodigy looked at the armor, and Naruto saw his eyes change and become red with 3 marks in them. OG-san, what's up with his eyes? Naruto asked. It's a Kekkei Genkei, the Uchiha family's Sharingan, or mirror wheel eye. The Hokage explained as Itachi avoided everything Al tried. It allows the Uchiha to copy others' skills. Naruto watched as the armor slapped his hands together. No. Freeze. Naruto ordered, and the armor's hands hovered over the ground. Naruto rushed to the armor. Brother. The armor asked confused. You can do alchemy? He asked after the nearly 7-foot armor straightened. Well, yeah, you knew that. Al's voice came from the armor. What the hell? OG-san, can you excuse us? He didn't wait, but grabbed the armor and pulled it into an alcove. Okay. What the hell is going on here? Naruto asked. What do you mean? The armor with Al's voice asked. Al, your soul armor. You shouldn't be able to do this. Naruto said, pulling on the memories, which were proving difficult to access. You are a steel golem I created, and I don't understand why you are sentient to the point of being able to use alchemy. The armor was silent for several minutes. It's a gift from the gates. When you summon me, it won't be your soul shard used to power the armor, but mine, Alphonse Elric. Naruto froze. Why? I wanted to see my brother again, even if it's through you. You were so like Ed when we were children. Naruto was flabbergasted. So, will you power every piece of soul armor I create? Naruto asked. And why didn't you say something the other day? I will be divided amongst however many you can summon, and as for why I didn't make myself known, I was trying to gather my memories after being dead for so long. Naruto saw the now red glowing eyes look out from the alcove to the fox. Brother never knew when to quit. Naruto was wondering what to say. How long can you last in this state before disappearing back and before I can summon you again? Naruto asked. As long as you keep repairing me. And I will come back whenever you pull the soul armor. Alphonse answered. I'm sorry, Al. I didn't know. I fell into this backwards and I'm trying to catch up with the knowledge in my head. A gauntleted hand rested on his shoulder. All help as will Ed. Your family now, brother. Naruto smiled and was about to leave the alcove when he was lifted up by his shirt so he was eye level with the armor. Hey, let me down. In a second. Al said. I will put up with a lot, but don't you ever tell Ed my feelings for winery. Naruto heard the tone of voice and nodded rapidly. I was joking. He said. His feet touched the floor and he sighed in relief. Now, be careful what you show Itachi. Oji-san was just telling me about the Uchiha's bloodline. He can copy what we do. I've been keeping my hands low and use my body to block what I do. Al sighed. So, I'm stuck with just taijutsu. Yeah, sorry about that. I promise to patch you up. Naruto said, hoping to appease the soul in armor. You better. They left the alcove and Naruto rejoined the sidelines while Al once more took up a stance. What was that, Naruto? The Hokage asked. I didn't want him to waste energy on attacks, so he's going to stick with taijutsu. Man, I hate lying to the old man, but I'm not sure if I can tell him the truth about this. Hearing a mewling, he turned to see Ed's hind leg pumping the air as Eboshi was sitting with him cradled like an infant while her other hand was really digging into his fur. Pathetic. Naruto muttered, turning back to see Itachi launch a series of attacks. Impressive, but something about him just screams arrogance. Oji-san, I don't think either Ibiki-san or the Uchiha will work well with me. They both seem stiff. Both turned to see Hana kneeling next to Eboshi looking at the fox. She blushed seeing the two males looking at her. Sorry. Ibiki's great at interrogation, but field work, she shrugged. He's wasted. Sarutobi nodded. True. He's very capable in the field and in command of the Anbu, but I agree I don't think either would work well with you, Naruto. XX. Itachi won after a bit more, and Shikaku Nara fought to a draw with the steel golem. Hayate interested Naruto with his skills, but Naruto thought the man looked sickly, and that might be a problem down the road. Anko surprised him with her attacks, and her snake hand attack had Al pinned to the arena wall while she carved into the armor with several kunai. The one that had every male in the arena wince as a large cobra was embedded in the armor's crotch. She's skilled with those snakes. Something about her. Naruto winced as he saw the damage he'd have to repair. It's a good thing Al can't feel anything. Naruto watched as Hana entered the arena. She smiled at the armor and asked how it was doing. Al, being the nice soul he was, responded, and as the Hokage said fight, Hana was on him, slashing and kicking with her hands in a style that reminded Naruto of a paw swipe from a tiger or another animal with claws. She summoned her dogs and he watched as she called out, "Beast human clone." And there were now 4 Hanas in the arena. She smiled and called out, "Quadruple piercing fang." The 4 spinning attacks shredded Al's armor as if he was caught in a vortex. Naruto watched as she hit it a second time. Winner. Hana Inuzuka. She pumped her fist in the air as her dogs returned to their form and then vanished into their scroll. Hana went back to the sidelines, but winked at Naruto on her way past him. Naruto dragged the shattered remains of Al to the side. Brother. Just one more Al. Let me make sure I have all the pieces, she really shredded you. It reminds me of the time Scar blew me up. Al said. Hold on. Naruto said, standing up and headed back to the arena and started to collect shards and splinters. Naruto was checking the arena floor. What's wrong, Naruto? The Hokage asked. I'm missing a couple of pieces of Al. I need them before I can fix him properly. Hana came back out. Sorry about that, she said, helping him look for pieces. It's okay. One of the reasons I have you all fighting Al. I can fix him with little effort. After that attack you used, Hana-chan, I'd be mulch. Naruto missed the blush on her face as he continued to pick up pieces. I think that's all of them. He muttered. Excuse me, he said and went back to the side. He was laying out the pieces. Give me a minute, Al. He said. Brother. Impressive abilities you possess, Naruto-kun. A voice said from behind him and he turned to see Itachi Uchiha standing there. Hey, how you doing, Itachi-san? My squad's been on downtime since Sparrow is laid up after surgery. I heard you were badly injured, yet you seem fine. Naruto shrugged. Eboshi Ba-chan's a miracle worker. Itachi was standing behind him and it was making him nervous. Fascinating jutsu. May I inquire how it is performed? Naruto was looking at Al, and was amazed both of them shared the wide-eyed panic look. It is part of Naruto's bloodline. The Hokage said, walking up. Only usable by Naruto and his family. Sadly, they died in the Kyuubi attack. Thank you, OG-san. Naruto thought, silently hiding his hands. He clapped them lightly and touched the armor. A white flash and the steel golem armor was repaired and shiny like new. Pity. Itachi said as he looked on, silently cursing the fact he didn't see the hand signs Naruto used. That appears to be a very powerful technique. I need to see how he does it. I don't believe it's a bloodline. I will return to the wall then. Naruto Uzumaki. Lord Hokage. He bowed and wandered off. Naruto shared a look with the Hokage. He's not going to be your partner. XX. I don't like that man. Al said as he stood once more, the soft hollow voice Naruto found soothing. Me either. The whole copy eye thing freaks me out. He looked to see Kurenai standing in the arena. Good luck, Al. Do I have to fight her? The armor asked. She looks. Al. Fine. I'm going. But if she gets mad at me, it's your fault. Naruto shook his head as he rejoined Eboshi and the Hokage. Are you ready, Kurenai? The Hokage asked the Chunin. Yes, my lord, she said. Naruto liked her red eyes. Then, fight. Kurenai's hands went through a series of seals and she stood there waiting. Al moved right at her and she looked surprised as she ducked a series of kicks and chops. Was that supposed to do something? Naruto asked the Hokage. Kurenai is gifted in the field of genjutsu. Apparently she tried one on your golem and it had no effect. Naruto nodded. He watched as the red-eyed woman pulled out kunai and sent them at Al. They clanged and clanked off the armor. Al caught a pair of them and sent them back. Kurenai ducked and tried for an uppercut and winced as her hand hit the metal hard. She staggered back and tried for a kick. She's not physically strong like the others. Naruto muttered and made a note on his pad. Yeah, but I bet she's an animal in the sack. Naruto didn't even look at the fox that had leapt onto his shoulder when he finger flicked him off and sent him back into the wall. Arrow Ed. He muttered. Kurenai surrendered, Al's fist stopping an inch from her face. Eboshi moved in and checked her out. Cracked your hand pretty good, dear. The medic said. Remember to use chakra to envelope your hands and feet. The Chunin blushed. Sorry. Naruto meanwhile was talking with Al, Ed on his shoulder. Tell her I'm sorry. Al said. You're still a big softy, Al. Ed said from Naruto's shoulder. Al patted the fox on the head. And you're still smaller than I am. Naruto's eyes widened as the fox-like buzzsaw destroyed the armor faster than anyone in the arena had before. Later, Al. He said as he cancelled the soul shard. Ed hit the floor with a piece of armor in his teeth. Bring him back. I'll show him small. Naruto shook his head as he scooped up Ed and put him on his shoulder and handed the list to the Hokage, whose eyes were on the fox. Don't, OG-san. I don't feel like holding him back. The Hokage nodded, keeping the you do a lot of damage, for such a small fox. Comment to himself. He looked at the notes. You sure? Yes. Naruto said. The Hokage looked at the gathered Jonin, Chunin and Anbu captain. Naruto's picked the finals. He looked at 7 standing before him. They are Anko Mitarashi and Hana Inuzuka. Anko and Hana looked at the others in surprise. Naruto hopped up onto the balcony rail and sat balanced. What the hell, brat? Anko asked. It's who I think I can work with. Naruto said. While Kurenai is skilled in her field, I'll need someone who can work the board. And that I won't have to worry about as I get my own kicked. The blonde thought. Ibiki nodded and left, as did the clan leader for the Nara clan and Kurenai, who patted Anko on the shoulder. Hayate paused. Cough, come see me if you wish to cough, learn about swords. He said to Naruto before leaving. Itachi was not moving. It seemed he was surprised he hadn't been named. Yes, Itachi. The Hokage asked. Did I perform below expectations, Lord Hokage? The Uchiha prodigy inquired. No, above and beyond all of you. But Naruto feels your style wouldn't work with him or the tasks he will be called upon to perform once his training is complete. I agree, and removing you from Anbu would not be worth the time, as you and your skills would be wasted. Man, laying on the bullshit, OG-san. Naruto thought as he watched the Hokage deal with the Uchiha. So, why us? Hana asked Naruto, drawing his attention back to her and Anko. Eboshi was seated and sipping tea nearby, but Naruto knew she was listening as well. As I said, it comes down to your skills and who I can work with and who I feel I can trust. Personality clashes on our jobs would get us both killed. I know Ibiki's talented, but I doubt we'd work well together in the field. Hayate-san seems sickly, not sure if that's an act or what, but he is limited in his own way. And Kurenai? Anko asked about her friend. While she is skilled in her field of genjutsu, physically she's not ready for the tasks the old man will give us. Both you and Hana here are more rough and ready and will be more flexible if it comes to us having to get dirty. Anko snorted. Always told Nai-chan that her prissy looks and ways would keep her off a job. So because we don't mind getting dirty, bloody in our talents. Naruto nodded. What about our looks? Anko taunted, opening her jacket. Naruto had to fight to keep the blood from shooting out his nose as the fishnet exposed chest was pushed towards him. Back of Anko. He's only 8 for Kami's sake. Hana said. Won't be that way forever. She leered at Naruto. Think of the possibilities, Hana, a properly trained boyfriend. Makes me really want to win now. Anko said, licking her lips. Naruto's blush was hidden as he turned to pick up Ed, who was chuckling. I like that one. Stow it, Ed. Once the arena doors were closed, the Hokage looked at the 2 remaining women. We'll take a few more moments to give you both a chance to rest up. He paused, seeing Naruto blushing, Ed's fox leer as he stared at Anko and Hana sighing into her hand. Both Hana and Anko went off to the side, both women using the time to stretch and prepare for the battle. Blushing Naruto. The Hokage asked. Careful, OG-san, I'll get even. The Hokage did a mental shudder, knowing the pranking abilities of Naruto from before. I wonder what the brat's going to be able to do now with his ability to transfigure. Ah shit. The Hokage knew his life just became more hectic. Ladies, he said, you may begin when you are ready. This match will go until one of you is knocked out, or I or Naruto call it over. Both Kunoichi nodded. No dogs? Anko asked. No snakes. Hana fired back. Maybe later. Taijutsu first. Anko asked, getting into a loose snake stance. Sure. Hana said, and both girls were in motion. Above, Naruto watched the Jonin and Chunin go at it. While they were of different rank, he could tell they were both skilled. This could be, was that in cheek? Naruto, bro, you've got to pick that Anko chick. Ed said from his shoulder. With a finger flick, he sent the 2-tailed fox flying. Arrow, Ed. He muttered as he watched the 2 girls fight. Chops, fists, elbows, knees, kicks ranging from high to low. They are good, Naruto thought. Below, Anko with a flurry of punches to Hana's ribs backed the Inuzuka off a bit, but it also gave the dog user a chance to try for a knee strike. Anko blocked with a forearm, but Anko left her arm open and Hana with a wristlock tried to grapple Anko to the ground. Hell no, the special Jonin said as she flipped forward and gave herself a bit of room, went with a lunging super kick that connected with Hana's jaw. The 2 broke apart, then leapt at one another, both drawing kunai, The clang of metal on metal filled the arena as the two kunoichi went back and forth, then up close and personal, their bodies inches apart as they tried to slice or stab the other, the whole while their free hands dealing out punches, or their legs kicks. Ed was balanced on the rail and he was leering down. Oh yeah, look at how they move. A bop on the head dropped him to the floor and Eboshi shook her head. We might need to neuter him, she said. Sarutobi winced, but Naruto didn't move as his eyes took in everything the two women below were doing. They leapt back. Genjutsu, Anko said, and her hands went to work while she gripped the kunai in her teeth by its handle. Hana tossed her kunai at Anko, forcing her to break her hand seal chain, and Hana's went to work as well. This is how you do it. She vanished and Anko was looking around wildly. Stop it. The Jonin yelled, swinging around. Naruto watched as Hana stayed out of range, powering the genjutsu. Wonder what she's showing Anko. Anko meanwhile put her hands together. Kai, she shouted, and the chakra pulse disrupted whatever she was seeing. Hana staggered under the force, but managed to dodge a hail of shuriken. She was once more locked in combat with Anko. Not so much fun now, is it, doggy? Anko teased. Bring it on, Boots. Hana fired back and they both leapt back. Anko bit her thumb and her hands went through several seals. Summoning jutsu, she yelled and a dozen cobras appeared. Contain her, she ordered them. Hana used shuriken to get rid of most of the snakes as she used chakra to run up a pillar. You want to play this game? Fine. She pulled out the scroll and her hands were in motion as well. Summoning jutsu. The Heimaru Senkyodai appeared and without command attacked the remaining snakes. Hana tossed them each a pill. Beast human clones. Anko backed off. She knew what this meant. Hey, Hana, my friend, you know I didn't mean those comments last week at the bar, right? The four Hanas snarled and Anko's, oh shit, this is gonna hurt, was lost in the cry of quadruple piercing fang. Four cyclones rushed at Anko and she couldn't pull a shushin fast enough to avoid them all as one of the Hanas clipped her and sent her airborne and they performed the attack again. Anko was battered around. She bounded off the wall. Okay. No more nice Anko-chan, she muttered. Striking Shadow Snake. She roared as she launched several snakes from her wrists at the oncoming tornadoes. XX. Naruto winced seeing both women bound and banged. Anko missed a Hana and was drilled into the wall, while three of the Hanas were bound with snakes. That did nothing to slow them down as the loose Hana used a volley of shuriken to rid her copies or the original of the snakes and they were inbound once more. The Hanas drilled Anko into the opposite wall and Naruto considered ending it, but the Anko that hit the wall vanished. Bunshin, Sarutobi said from next to him. This is far from over. Smoke bombs went off around the arena, bathing the whole thing in smoke. A vile smell wafted up and Naruto wrinkled his nose while Ed backed away whimpering. What the hell? Naruto hissed, covering his nose and mouth. Stink bombs, Sarutobi said, covering his own face. They watched as the smoke cleared and there were now 5 Hanas in the arena. Good idea, Ed muttered with his tails and paws covering his nose. The fox's eyes were watering. What do you mean? Naruto asked. She used the smoke bombs to hide her transformation jutsu, and she then used the stink bomb to cut off Hana and her dog's sense of smell. Naruto turned away from the fox and looked once more into the arena. Damn smart tactic. Hana and her dogs can't attack for fear of hitting one of their own, but this gives Anko a chance to rest up and plan, and then she can attack from cover. Naruto thought as he watched. The 5 Hanas were looking at one another and Naruto had to admit, this could be. Hana lunged and struck another. The puff of smoke moments later showed one of the dogs laid out and unconscious. Shit, Hana said as she spun to look at the remaining 3. Nice idea, Anko, but this ends. She dismissed the dogs back to the scroll and it left 2 Hanas. Anko back flipped away and fired a trio of shuriken as her transformation dispelled. Hana leapt over the throwing stars and came at Anko. Left, right, left. The punches centimeters from the Jonin's face as she twisted and twirled away, yet unable to get enough distance to mount an attack of her own. Once more a taijutsu fight broke out. They're both skilled, Naruto muttered. Behind the blonde, the Hokage and the doctor shared a look. The end came as both women had a surge of adrenaline and it ended with Hana drilling Anko with a stiff lunging punch, and as Anko flew back she brought her foot up and connected with Hana's jaw and sent her flying. Both women hit the opposite walls and slid down unconscious. A draw, Ed said in surprise. The Hokage stroked his beard. Naruto shook his head and Eboshi watched as a bunch of Naruto shadow clones emerged from the alcoves and vanished in puffs of smoke. What are you doing? She asked the Naruto next to her. He winced at the information overload and then looked at her when the headache became lighter. I created clones early this morning and placed them in spots around the arena to view the battles. I should have dispelled them earlier, but they gave me a view from every angle. Eboshi pulled out a vial. Drink this. It will get rid of your headache. He downed the concoction and sighed as he felt the headache vanish. Thanks, Ba-chan. He watched as she went to check on Hana and Anko. So, Naruto. The Hokage said. You have a decision. Naruto heard the tone. I do, but I have a feeling you've got something better, Oji-san. Perhaps. The Hokage said, watching as Eboshi worked on bringing both women around. You are aware that Konoha is famous for its three-man cells, correct? Naruto nodded and Ed stood up straighter. A lecherous grin was forming on the fox's face. Then I am suggesting take both as your partner. Naruto looked at him. Isn't that a waste of resources? I mean, I might not be fully ready for a couple years. The Hokage nodded. True. But I have an idea. Naruto shuddered at the gleam he saw in the old man's eyes. I am going to regret this, I just know it. The blonde thought as he joined the Hokage in getting Hana to a sitting position while they waited for Eboshi. XX. Naruto, Anko and Hana sat before the Hokage's desk hours later. Both women looked at the Hokage. As a special unit you answer only to me. The Hokage was saying. I thought only one of us could be his partner. Hana asked confused. Despite Eboshi's healing jutsu, the Inuzuka's jaw ached from Anko's kick. How many two-person cells have you heard of? The Hokage asked as he filled his pipe. So what does this mean, my lord? Anko asked. Eboshi had straightened her nose and reset it properly. You three will learn to work together. Naruto will train, and when he's ready you will be sent on missions. So we just sit around while the kid gets ready? Anko asked. No. You both will train as well, and there are duties all three of you will be doing as well. Anko's eyes narrowed. I will not do D-rank missions. Nor I, Hana said. The Hokage chuckled. No D ranks. The Hokage said. The three of you will be doing a continuous C rank while Naruto trains up his skills. Then we'll see from there. The Hokage lit his pipe. So, what's the kid so good at that he gets to skip the academy? Anko asked finally. Naruto has a power that will make him equal to nearly anyone in or out of the village. His taijutsu is already well above what they teach in the academy, and his memory and liberal use of Kage Bunshin makes sending him there a waste of time. I've marked him on the rolls as special genin, but his title is actually Konoha's Alchemist. The Hokage puffed on his pipe a moment. When the time comes he will be ranked thusly and you both will be labeled Jonin, and like Naruto given Sannin level travel rights. No matter what, the three of you answer only to myself or the next Hokage, if you so choose. Anko's eyes widened at the travel rights. There will be a monthly budget for the three of you. I would like to set up a base for you. Wait till I'm trained, Oji-san. Naruto said from where he was sitting. He shared a look with Ed. Once I'm done then fine. The Hokage knew that Naruto didn't want to abandon the den just yet and nodded. So at this moment I congratulate you all on your new team, and look forward to what you will all do in the near future. 16-year-old Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze looked into the disaster that had once been an inn. The past 8 years had changed him. He grew a bit taller and had to readjust his automail arm each time. He wore black pants and a shirt under a black trench coat. Ed complained about him losing the red one on a mission, but Naruto said it drew attention. Yeah, coming from a guy who used to wear neon orange, that says a lot. Was Ed's reply. His hair had grown longer and now was tied into a braid down his back. His hitayate was loosely tied around his neck like a collar. Aren't you a bit young to be an investigator? The innkeeper asked. Naruto ignored him as he looked at the amount of damage. Behind him Anko was telling off the innkeeper. You say there were 2 of them? Naruto asked. Yes sir. Big as you please. They weren't too bright, but they wiped out all my customers. Naruto stopped seeing a foot indent in the wall. It's them, he said looking at Anko. The Bash brothers were here. Great. I left my howitzer back at Konoha. She muttered. The who? The innkeeper inquired. Han and Cho Bash. Twins that are gifted with impervious skin and strength that is said close that of the legendary Sanin Tsunade. I thought they were in an Iwa prison. Anko said as she saw Naruto looking at something. His gloved hand touched it and she saw him frown. What is it? Anko asked. I'm not 100% sure enough to say. Naruto said. Where's Hana? She's with the Fur Brigade sniffing the trail they left. Naruto was on his feet and heading for the door. Hey, what about my inn? The innkeeper yelled after them. Anko looked over her shoulder. File your insurance claim like everyone else. She followed the blonde down the street. XX. They caught up with Hana at the edge of town. The Heimaru triplets were pacing back and forth. Ed was perched on Hana's shoulders. They aren't hard to track, they're leaving a trail a blind person could follow. She said as her teammates arrived. Her and Anko hadn't changed too much, filled out a bit, became more beautiful in Naruto's opinion, and more deadly in their skills. That worries me, Naruto muttered as Ed leapt to his shoulder. Why? The two-tailed fox inquired. There was a powder back at the inn. If it is what I think it is, those two are more dangerous. What did you find? Hana asked. Naruto held up a vial that contained a sample he had collected and passed it to the Inuzuka tracker. She uncorked it and took a tentative sniff, then jerked her head back. Sin. If they're supped up on that, it's going to be 100 times harder to stop them. Anko said. This is bad. This stuff appeared 2 years back. Naruto sighed. Vote time. Do we chase the towers of power that are lit up on Sin and try and stop them from crossing back over the border, or we report back to the old man? Anko was bouncing on her heels and Naruto she wanted to go after the Bash brothers. Hana looked up the trail. I don't like letting a trail go cold. Naruto sighed. Alright, but if I wake up in the hospital again you both are wearing nurse outfits. Hana laughed while Anko slapped him on the back. There's the spirit runt. The air went cold and Anko laughed as she avoided the kunai barrage. Hana shook her head at that. They both knew Ed and Naruto were sensitive about their height, and Anko always went out of her way to tease them both and enjoy the chase after. He's getting really good at that shadow clone jutsu, he doesn't even need the seals anymore. She muttered to her dogs. He could create a cage bunshin of himself or kunai without seals and it made him an army of one. Not to mention his other skills. She thought as her and the triplets followed the pair. XX. They entered a rock valley and Naruto scowled. This screams ambush. He muttered. Hana an hour into the hunt had noticed that the trail seemed planned, as if it was deliberate. Anko snorted. The Bash brothers aren't that bright. And they're hopped up on Sin, so that means there's someone else in charge. Hana stopped. The trail vanishes here, she said. They were in dead end. Naruto shook his head. Oh yeah, ambush. He muttered. No sooner than he said that then boulders were tossed from above at them. The three Konoha investigators leapt out of the way. From above they heard an insane cackle. Mizuki. Naruto said seeing the white-haired Chunin. How'd he get out? Anko asked. 2 years they had caught him trying to steal the forbidden scroll from the Hokage's office. A short battle where Mizuki tried to tell Naruto about the Kyuubi got a good chuckle from all three. Naruto then beat him down with taijutsu, and then used alchemy to create iron bands to bind him and they carried him back to Konoha and handed both to the Hokage. We meet again Kyuubi brat. Mizuki says from atop the surrounding cliffs. He was backed by the Bash brothers on either side of him. How'd you get out of prison? Naruto asked. He was curious, and Mizuki was slated for a 20-year term in prison for his actions. Killed the guard when he brought me dinner. Met up with these two at the border. He jerked a thumb at Han and Sho. So, why'd you come back to the land of fire? You could have been anywhere else. Bah, I'll rule this country from the shadows. There is a serious lack of criminal activity here. Mizuki said. Then I guess we'll have to take you down again. Mizuki laughed. You got lucky last time, kid. Besides, you can't take all three of us. Sho and Han laughed and Naruto could see that their eyes were dilated. Great, they're stoned out of their minds on Sin. Anko. Hana. Yeah, we got Dumb and Dumber. Don't mess around with Tem there. Anko said, cutting off Naruto. Yeah, we'll tango with them till you got him bagged and tagged. Hana said. Let's dance. Naruto said as Mizuki dove down, sending a large windmill shuriken ahead of him. The Bash brothers slid down the side, each sporting a huge grin. Both were armed with spiked clubs. Be careful, girls. They're both 7 feet and hard as rock. Naruto thought before batting aside the shuriken with his right hand and using the kunai that dropped from his left sleeve to his empty hand to block Mizuki as they were locked in combat seconds later. XX. Hana and Anko had learned to work together over the last 8 years. The Heimaru triplets went in first. Anko summoned several snakes the same size to support them. Both women avoided the club swipes by leaping high into the air. Anko higher, grabbed Hana's wrists and spun using a slingshot maneuver to fire the Inuzuka at Chobash. Her foot connected with the giant's chest and while it staggered him, it did nothing else. Hana landed and winced as her foot throbbed. Ah. Anko sent shuriken at Han Bash and landed next to Hana. You okay? My foot hurts. Look brother. Pretty pretties. Cho said. I like pretty pretties. Han said. The dogs and snakes were attacking, but it was like mosquitoes, no effect. The only thing saving them was that they were faster than the Bash brothers. Yeah, well you're ugly ugly. Anko said as she launched several more shuriken. She spoke low to Hana. Can you walk? I can run. It's not broke, but I wouldn't recommend hitting them like that again. They dove aside as an overhand club strike would have connected where they were. Anko's tossed several kunai and then her hands sped through a series of seals. She finished and took a deep breath. Fire release. Dragon fire technique. Fire runs down the wires that were attached to the kunai and raced towards the Bash brothers. Anko smiled as they struck true. I hope you like your idiot. Well done. She said to Hana as they watched the Bash brothers engulfed in flames. XX. The kunai fight was close. I'm impressed brat, you know how to fight. Is it you or the Kyuubi? Mizuki said as he shoved Naruto back. Me. The Kyuubi is gone, has been for over 8 years. Naruto said as he went for a leg sweep. Mizuki leapt into the air and tried for a kick, but Naruto got his arm up and blocked it. I find it hard to believe that someone your age is this good. Mizuki said as he tried to stab at Naruto only to have it blocked by Naruto's kunai. I don't care what you believe. I brought you in once Mizuki, I'll do it again. No you won't. I'm not going back. He made a series of hand signs and leapt back. Earth style. Earth spike. Naruto leapt away as the ground he had been standing on became filled with spikes of earth and rock. Not bad Tem. Naruto smirked as a dozen cage bunshin surrounded him. How'd you do that? You didn't even use signs. Mizuki was shocked. Get him. The original ordered. One grabbed another clone and spun him about by his arm and leg before firing him at Mizuki. The former Chunin saw the clone coming and ducked, only to be kicked in the air by another one that had slid across the ground and kicked Mizuki into the air. Another clone used one as a springboard and leapt up and kicked Mizuki higher. He spun around in the air and saw 4 clones above him. They kicked him back and forth between them like a bounce ball. Another clone leapt from the back of one and with a flipping axe kick drove Mizuki back towards the ground where the original Naruto was waiting. Mizuki saw him holding a metal bat and he took up a position. Batter up, Naruto said and swung hard, connecting with the free-falling Mizuki and sending him flying into the cliffside hard. The shadow clones all shared a grin before dispersing. Home run, Naruto said as Mizuki was unconscious. And the crowd goes wild. He then looked at Ed and the fox held up a sign with a 5 on it. What? Why only a 5? The blonde asked the fox. Wasted effort and you played too much with him. Ed said. His fox features sneered. The loud explosion had them both turn to see the Bash brothers, while smoking were advancing on Anko and Hana. Not good. Naruto traced a seal onto the bat and leapt into the air, vanishing with a shushin. XX. Anko was pissed. One of her better fire jutsus didn't work. It only burned their clothes. Hana and her dogs had tried for the Fang over fist combo, but that had no effect. The girls were getting frustrated and the Bash brothers were once more in strike range when Naruto appeared on Cho's shoulder. Pardon me, playing through. He said and swung the bat as hard as he could like a golf club and connected with the side of the giant's head. Naruto vanished as the bat exploded. He reappeared next to Anko. Damn, they got rocks for brains. The side of Cho's head was scorched and bleeding from the ear, but still didn't fall over. Where's Mizuki? Hana asked. He's become one with the canyon wall. Naruto said and both girls saw the crater where they could see Mizuki's leg hanging out and twitching every so often. Any ideas how to stop the ugly twins? No, Anko said. Nothing we have affects them. They took our best attack and other than scratching them up, nothing. Hana admitted. You're up, Gaki. Anko said, giving him a nudge. Anko. The blonde yelled in protest. He stopped several feet in front of the Bash brothers. Guys, can we talk about this? The mirror image sneers answered that. Fine. Naruto said and clapped his hands together. Don't say I didn't give you a chance. He slammed his palms to the ground as 100 suits of armor appeared. XX. The Anbu squad caught up hours later and found Naruto sitting atop the cage holding the Bash brothers while Mizuki was in a similar one that gave him just enough room to sit down. Sir. Gopher masked Anbu said, saluting the blonde. Hey, I think you all lost something. Yeah. We picked their trail up. How? Military secret, Gopher. The Anbu nodded and they saw Anko and Hana coming back from the village carrying several orders of food. Ah. Dinner time. Come on, Ed. The Anbu can deal with this. The blonde said, hopping off the cage. He stopped and looked at the Bash brothers. Now you both will behave for the Anbu and not cause them any trouble, right? We be good. Han said. We go to prison and be good. Cho said, nodding his head as well. Naruto nodded. Careful with Mizuki. I think I broke his hip. Naruto joined Hana and Anko as they set up against a boulder. That was fun. Hana said. Her ankle was wrapped and the dogs had been dismissed. Anko and Naruto were fine, as was Ed. I brought you 2 bowls of ramen, but Iboshi said you need to eat fruit as well. Anko said. Naruto groaned. Iboshi Ba-chan is so mean. He muttered as he took his bowls. Only allows me so much ramen a week. Anko snorted. That's cause you're so damn short. Hell, the only one smaller than you is that chibi plushie you call a companion. Hana sighed as Ed launched himself across the way at her, snarling and swearing. Hana grabbed a handful of Naruto's coat and held him back from joining in attacking Anko. The Anbu watched the special unit, many of them sweat dropping under their masks. Han and Cho looked on and shuddered. Mizuki, still unconscious, twitched as Anko's yell of, "Not there," rang out across the valley. Gopher shook his head, wondering how these 3 caught the Bash brothers and Mizuki when it looked like they were barely old enough to be out of the academy. Call off the damn furball. Anko yelled as Naruto was sitting with Hana eating. Both seemed to smile at the free show. XX. Konoha. Well, here's your pay. We never thought it would be the Bash brothers involved. The Hokage said as Naruto stood before him. The last 8 years had matured the boy in ways the Hokage would never think of. Well, Ibiki can find out their roots for distributing sin. We can close it down before it comes to Konoha in full force. Sarutobi nodded as he lit his pipe. You coming for dinner tonight? He asked. Can't. Hana says her mother wants me and Anko there tonight. Kiba's passed his genin exam and you know how the Inuzukas love to party. Sarutobi smiled. He was happy that Naruto had found acceptance with some of the families and he had made friends with some of the kids his age. And you thought the 3 of you teaching at the academy would never be recognized? The old man said, and Naruto growled. I still don't think the Uchiha brat should be allowed in the field. Did you read his psychology reports from Inoichi Yamanaka? Sarutobi sighed. Naruto and his team had been first on the scene to the Uchiha massacre and they nearly caught Itachi. Naruto had held back for fear of the Sharingan copying his abilities. They were still uncertain if it could, but the blonde didn't want to take the chance after he'd seen Itachi on a mission copy Akiri Nin's fighting style down to the chakra enhancements. So you taking a pair on? Sarutobi inquired. Ah. Hell no, old man. Besides, that would waste my team's skills. Naruto said. Explain your reasoning. We would be stuck training fresh genin, and we wouldn't be able to perform our investigations. Hell, if a genin was with us on this last one, they would have been dead. The Bash brothers are solid as a mountain. If I didn't have my abilities, you might very well be burying the 3 of us as is. You've got to admit, OG-san, we don't do safe. Hell, last month we had that mission to Iowa. Let me tell you, they feared my father, but I put a whole new fear into them. Naruto's reputation as Konoha's Fullmetal Fox Alchemist had spread over the last 8 years. His squad's liberation of Snow last year was still the talk of the council meetings, and the representative from Snow was asking on the princess's behalf for Naruto to return to Snow when he's able. And if we hadn't chased Orochimaru out of Rice, you can bet his scheme for that hidden village would have been troublesome. Sarutobi had to agree with that, but winced as Naruto used the same phrase as the Nara. Another of Naruto's accomplishments was a year after being teamed with Anko and Hana, he'd removed the curse seal on Anko. Eboshi laughed when Anko kissed Naruto so hard the blonde had passed out with a grin and nosebleed. The nosebleed had been from the fact that Anko had been topless and pressed against him, proving the fact the blonde liked women and got endless teasing from the Hokage's doctor, as well as Asuma, who had been there as well. Be that as it may, I have an odd number of students, the Hokage said, and I think your squad would benefit from the skills of these two. Naruto narrowed his eyes. Who? The Hokage slid the files over the desk and Naruto read them. You're shitting me. XX. Hana and Anko met Naruto at the dango stand. He didn't smile as he slid the pay vouchers across the table to them. What's the matter, Naruto? Hana asked. Yeah, you should be happy. We have an Inuzuka party to go to tonight, Anko said, savoring her dango and a small jug of sake. The old man has a new assignment for us, the blonde said, stealing Anko's sake and chugging it from the jug. What? Already? Hana was surprised. Usually we get a week off. Anko agreed. Did Ibiki get something from Mizuki or the Bash brothers? Hana asked. No, not yet. And if he does, it's going to Anbu to deal with, Naruto said. Well, what the hell is the mission then? Anko asked, putting her skewer down. He wants us to take 2 genin from the current graduates and add them to our team. Hana and Anko shared a look. Is that all? Naruto sighed and pulled out the files and slid them across the table. Anko grabbed them and flipped them open. You're shitting me, she said. No. What did you tell him? Hana asked as she read over Anko's shoulder. I'd talk to you both first. We have until team placements at the end of the week to decide. What do you think? Hell no. Anko. Can we pick someone else? Hana asked. Asuma wants the Ino Shika Cho team. Kurenai has demanded Hinata Hyuga. He sighed. That leaves us Shino Ambarame, your brother Kiba, Sakura Haruno and the Uchiha. Tell him no. Besides, the council wants Kakashi Hatake to train the emo bitch boy. Anko said. I agree. Naruto said. But the old man feels we'd be better fit for him. Hana and Anko shared a look. We can't trust him. And once his eye activates, none of our personal skills would be safe. Naruto nodded. There had been many times in the last couple years before his murdering of his family that Itachi had followed them around and watched them. I know. The last thing we need is an Uchiha learning about alchemy. Hana nodded. It's bad enough what we found in Rice. Orochimaru has a very basic concept. If he ever learned your secrets, both shuddered as they'd watched Naruto study and train over the years. And the second one, Anko said. Well, Oji-san hinted that Kurenai was eyeing Shino and Kiba for her team. Anko snorted. Too much specialization, it sounds like. Asuma should break up the Ino Shika Cho idea, as many people already know their patterns thanks to their father's fame as a team. Hana looked at the smaller file. Hana-chan, Naruto asked. We're going to get stuck with this, aren't we? No. If we tell Oji-san no, and why he'll agree to it. Naruto said. And you can't think of a reason. Anko said. Then lie. Naruto smiled. We'll talk about this more during the week. We have until team assignments to make a decision. If we phrase it right, we could get 2 genin of our choice. Hana sighed and Anko shook her head. I don't want to be around the Uchiha brat, period, and my mind isn't changing on that. Naruto looked at the files. Me either. I hate Mondays. Naruto groaned. I hate hangovers even more. He thought as he used his metal arm to cover his eyes, the coolness of the metal easing his throbbing head. He blinked, realizing he wasn't in his bed, and he felt someone stir against his side as a leg and arm were draped over him. A soft feminine moan had him tense. Turning his head, he saw that he was in bed with a very Inuzuka matriarch. Hana is going to kill me for this, I just know it. Naruto thought as Sum snuggled her face into his neck. Back to sleep, pup. Too early for more. She muttered, and he had to agree. She won't let the others kill me, I hope. XX. Around noon, Naruto was sitting at the table in the kitchen and Sum was smirking. Cradle robber, he muttered. The head of the Inuzuka clan smirked. Rocked your world all night, didn't I, kiddo? Naruto blushed at that. You've got nothing to be ashamed of, Sum said with a leer. They both turned to see Hana stagger into the kitchen wearing a pair of loose pants and an oversized shirt, her eyes were bloodshot and she looked like she rolled out of bed and threw on the first things she could find. Which was true. Hana-chan. Naruto said, sipping the very black and very strong coffee that Sume made. Mother, you violated my teammate, again. The younger Inuzuka woman hissed, sitting down. Well, you keep letting him slip through your fingers, Sume said with a leer. He's of age and he's damn good at pleasing a woman. Mom. Hana said, looking green. Sume laughed, seeing her daughter blush and Naruto match her. He keeps it up, you might call him daddy, unless you do something on missions that already have you calling him that. Sume laughed again as both Naruto and her daughter fled the kitchen. Naruto and Hana sat on the porch, both hissed at the bright thing in the sky called the sun. Well, I ended up in your mom's bed. You ended up in yours. Wonder where Anko-chan ended up? The blonde asked. Hana snorted. Kiba was hitting on her like no tomorrow. I think he's still pinned to the wall outside his room where she staked him with a buttload of kunai. Naruto laughed at the mental image and winced as his head throbbed in pain. Remind me why I get drunk here and end up in your mother's bed. Hana sipped her own coffee. For someone so smart, you can't drink for shit. Silence reigned between the two for a bit before Hana spoke. Are you really worried that the Uchiha can copy your alchemy? Naruto looked at her, wondering what brought this on. Not really, since I don't use hand signs and the energy is different than chakra. I spent 3 nights in the library after the tournament learning about the Sharingan copy. I still don't want them to learn anything I can do. They can copy movement, and if they learn about alchemic circles and runes, then that could be troublesome if they look it up. With Sasuke the last one here in Konoha, I don't want to chance it regardless. I'd seen Itachi copy movements of others with those eyes of his. Hana nodded. I don't want the Uchiha, and I really don't want Kiba. Do we really have to take a pair of genin? Naruto sighed. No. But Oji-san hinted it would be a favor to him. Hana snorted. I'd rather take Konohamaru and his little friends. Naruto smirked. His teammates had visited the Hokage residence to get him one morning and found Naruto babysitting 3 kids. Anko had laughed as Hana dug Naruto out from under the bodies of the 3 kids. They start the academy soon. Naruto said. I almost pity Iruka. Hana snorted. No, you don't. You're glad he's teaching and not us again. True. Naruto said. The morning silence was broken by, damn it. Ed, bring that back here. Across the compound Ed came flying out a dog door. In his mouth was something very familiar to both Hana and Naruto, who groaned and covered his face with a glove-covered right hand. Arrow Fox. Naruto muttered, and moments later Anko was out the door wearing a bed sheet and carrying a kunai. She's going to skin him one of these days. Hana said as they watched the pair race around the compound. She's doing very well for being barefoot and wearing a sheet. Hana noted. Naruto was about to agree when Ed changed course and raced at them, leapt over Naruto and entered the main house. Sadly, Anko's leap was messed up by her legs being tangled in her bedsheet and she crashed into Naruto, taking them both to the ground. Good morning, Anko-chan. Naruto groaned as she sat up. He froze. I'm going to skin that damn furball one of these days. He keeps stealing my fishnet. Hana was looking at her. What? Anko felt something and looked down to see a bright red Naruto, and she realized what she was sitting on. Really, Naruto-kun? She purred as she traced a finger over his chest. I didn't know you thought of me like that. Laughter from the doorway revealed Sume with Anko's mesh in one hand and a sheepish-looking Ed in the other being held by the scruff of his neck. Did you two lose something? Naruto was unable to speak as Anko was grinding into him and he saw the smirk on her face. He made a sound and Hana reached out and grabbed Anko by the ear, pulled her off. Get off him. He's been ridden once already, and we need to check out the runts at the academy. Anko pouted. Your mom always gets there first. Naruto lay there for a minute as the girls went to get dressed. Sume dropped Ed on Naruto's chest. They both care for you, you know that runt. Yeah, Naruto said softly, ignoring the runt comment. And kiddo, trust me when I say you can please both of them if last night was any indication. Naruto blushed again as she went back into the house laughing. Is it me, Ed, or all adults perverts? The fox on his chest looked at him. You're asking me. I'm millennia old. And a super pervert. Naruto muttered, sitting up and grabbing Ed by his scruff and held him at eye level. Stop peeping on Anko and Hana, and stop stealing their clothes. Ed looked abashed. Well, you won't let me go out and have fun, and that hag in there told me if I even looked at one of her clan's dogs she'd boil my balls and fry my scrotum, and that's before she'll make it really hurt. Naruto sighed as he stood, dropping Ed to the ground. I'll be back in a bit. Find where I left my clothes. Are we really going to watch the kitties? Maybe. I do need to check in on the den and the apartment. Ed chuckled. Living with two hot jonin, I'm surprised you can blush still. Naruto sighed. I'm surprised I still have blood in my body. He muttered, having walked in on both women coming out of the shower. Should have added another bathroom to the damn place. Naruto thought as he found his clothes. He could hear Sume yelling at Kiba about treating girls with respect as she took him down off the wall. And to think, she's just as loud during. Naruto thought as a mental image of Sume passed through his mind. I so need more male friends. XX. They didn't visit the academy, instead they were exploiting Anko's favorite pastime. Annoy Ibiki. I'll pay you an S rank to get her out of here. Ibiki said as Anko tormented an Iwanin they had captured. But she's having fun. Naruto said as he and Hana shared a bag of chocolate dates. The man's scream filled the room. Oh, look, she brought out her snake whip. Hana said, and Naruto turned to see Anko armed with the whip that was topped by 6 living vipers. Anko. Naruto called out. What? She asked, turning to face them. Why don't you let Ibiki have a moment with the nice Iwa ninja before he soils himself? Anko pouted but headed back towards them while Ibiki went to speak with the nin. If we get genin, can I torture them? Anko asked, swiping a handful of dates. Maybe. Naruto said. The three left the interrogation room. We agree we don't want the Uchiha. Both women nodded. And none of the others fit well with us either, correct? Naruto said as they walked. Damn straight. Anko said. Then, our only call is to tell Oji-san no. Naruto said. Anko bounced from foot to foot and raised her hand. Bathroom's over there, Anko. Hana said, and the snake Jonin slapped her arm. Not that. Tell him we'll work with Kurenai's team once in a while, maybe assume if he's not being too lazy. Naruto nodded. And avoid Hitaki and the Uchiha. Bingo. Now, what are we going to do with the rest of the week? Hana shrugged. We could continue working on the apartment. I'm sick of sleeping at mom's. I'm sick of sleeping at your mom's as well. Anko said. She'd been kicked out of her apartment when she threatened the building manager for disrespecting her teammate. She never told Hana or Naruto. I was thinking of working on the den a bit. No way. You were allowed the sewer home for a while, but this is bullshit. You have a room at the apartment. Anko said. Then she got a leer on her face. Or is it you want to slip into Sume's room more often? Hana chased Anko down the street. Naruto sighed. I'll never understand women, and from Ed's memories he doesn't either. With a sigh he chased after the pair. XX. Friday rolled around far too quickly for everyone that wasn't a genin. Naruto and his teammates stood before the desk of the Hokage, along with numerous other jonin. Well, Naruto, did you and your teammates decide? Naruto nodded his head. We have Lord Hokage. To both Naruto and Sarutobi it felt odd hearing that phrase, but appearances must be held before others. Team Alchemy has to regretfully decline the position to train genin as we looked over the files you presented us with, and none of them would work well within our dynamics. A scoff had Naruto turn to see Kakashi Hitaki, his head buried in a book. Something to add, Kakashi. The one-eyed jonin looked at Naruto. You're the same age, and yet you think you have the right to make decisions. Naruto smirked. Jealous Hitaki. The only person in this room that outranks me is the Hokage, and I answer only to him. Don't think I forgot that stunt you pulled 6 months ago. Kakashi closed his book. You have far too much freedom and power. I was asked by the council to watch and report. Which makes me question your loyalties to the Hokage if you go around him and answer to a political body that is only there to advise him. Naruto said. Anko and Hana both turned to face Kakashi as well, while the other jonin in the room backed off. They have a right to know the resources that Konoha has. Negative. My skills are mine, my clan's and my children's when and if I have any. Just because you stole a bloodline from your dying teammate, doesn't mean it's open season on everyone else's abilities. Next time I find you in my apartment, Hitaki, I can guarantee you will be a real Cyclops. Kakashi's eye narrowed. Is that a threat? No, a promise, and you know I keep my promises. Enough. The Hokage roared. Kakashi, you were warned and punished. Naruto, stand down. As you wish. The blonde said as he turned back towards the Hokage. I had hoped you would take a team. But alas, the Hokage said. Well, the girls and I are willing to work with a team led by Kurenai and assume, if he can get his up before noon. Hey, from the smoking Jonin. Runt. Lazy. Naruto fired back, biting down on the impulse to launch himself at Asuma for the runt comment. Why not my team? Did you say something, Kakashi? Naruto asked, winking at Guy who was off to the side. Yosh. Seems like you have a rival even hipper than you, Kakashi. Guy said, and the others in the room smirked. Whatever. Hatake muttered. The Hokage handed Asuma, Kurenai and Kakashi their team folders, then several other Jonin came forward and took theirs. Once the Hokage dismissed them, Naruto and his team remained behind. We got word of the drugs coming in from a route that passes through Suna. The Hokage began. Ibiki had Mizuki crying inside of a minute, and the Bash brothers told us everything down to the fact they wet the bed until they were 8. Well, the one called Cho admits he still wets the bed. Anko and Hana wrinkled their noses. We didn't need to know that, Oji-san. Naruto said. Your team is to head out. You'll be joined by Gecko Hayate and a pair of Chunin, Kotetsu and Azumo. Anko groaned. Anyone but those two. How about you give us Guy and his genin team instead? Hana snickered while Naruto sighed. So we get the walking disease and the two stooges, we'll meet them at the gate in an hour. The Hokage nodded and sent a messenger pigeon to inform the other half of the team. Hayate will have the mission profile and details, you are to study them on the way and destroy the file. The Hokage said. He stood. Good luck. The three nodded and left out the window. Is it too hard to ask for them to use the door? The Hokage muttered as he watched them go. Hana and Naruto shared a look, wondering if they could get away with killing the two Chunin. Yo, disease, take care of your toddlers. Anko called to the coughing Jonin. Hey, we're not children. Kotetsu said. Fooled us. Hana fired back. Naruto sighed. It had been a good at the idea for a double team mission. I swear the old man is punishing us for not choosing a genin team by putting us with those two. Naruto usually liked the pair of Chunin. But on missions he was ready to summon Al and have him and Ed deal with the pair. Hey, Ruto. Azumo called. No, we're not there yet. The blonde spun about and yelled at the Chunin. Hayate snorted as he continued leaping from tree to tree. Hana, with Ed on her shoulder, shook her head knowing that the pair of Chunin were going to end up tied to a tree and left for the insects covered in honey if they kept pushing. Wasn't going to ask that, but that'll be okay too. Azumo said and shared a look with Kotetsu. Then what did you want? Naruto asked as he leapt to the next tree. Is it true you bagged Sume in Izuka? The hail of shuriken from Hana, Anko and Naruto left the Chunin pinned to the tree trunk while the others kept moving. Kotetsu stopped and pulled his friend free, shaking his head. What? You should know better to ask that question. Kotetsu said, pocketing the weapons to return them to the trio. Hey, you were thinking it too. Azumo said once he was free. And she is hot for someone her age. Kotetsu sighed. True. But I think Hana and or Anko will kill any other woman that gets within arm's reach for something like that. I heard they had a very long talk with a Yame from Ichiraku's ramen. I heard that it took her 2 weeks to be willing to leave her father's apartment after said discussion. They started leaping again. Not to mention that foreign girl they handed over to Ibiki. Both Chunin shuddered. I think I agree with Shikaku Nara. Azumo said. Yeah, women are troublesome. Kotetsu finished as they hurried to catch up with their team. XX. It's not my fault. Naruto said a day later as they looked at the smoldering forms of Anko and Hana. Well, who else blew up the lab? Anko hissed. Naruto spun and pointed a finger at Azumo and Kotetsu. They did it. Both Chunin who were sifting through the remains of the drug lab that they had been raiding froze. Liar. Both yelled as they backed up, putting Hayate between them and the irate Kunoichi that were covered in ashes and smoking clothes. Ed was on the ground. A slight flame was on the tip of his tails and he was growling at the pair. Hayate, seeing his delicate position, shushined away and appeared next to Naruto. You both were playing with exploding tags near the chemicals. He said, coughing. Hana growled. Come here. She said, crooking her finger. Anko said nothing, pulling out a kunai. You shit stains not only blew up the evidence, and allowed those to get away with your games, but you damn near blew us up as well. Azumo looked at his partner. Hey, who knew those chemicals were that sensitive? Naruto sighed. Maybe the big warning signs should have been your first clue. Hayate coughed. As much as I'm sure I'd enjoy watching you pound those two stupider than they are, what shall we do now? He asked, finishing with another cough. Either we head to Suna and see if we pick up the trail, or we report back that the lab and all the evidence was destroyed. Naruto said. Truthfully, I'd prefer to return to the old man with something other than a mission failure. But Suna, Katetsu started to say, but a glare from Anko and Hana shut him up. We'll see if we can pick up any leads there as the routes pass through there. Naruto continued. He looked at Hayate. We should split out team here. The coughing Jonin nodded. We'll report back about what's going on. Ah, can't we go with them? Azumo asked. No. 5 shouts were the unanimous answer as Ed finally noticed his tail was still smoldering and put it out. Tell OG-san we'll follow what we find and send word if we need help, preferably not those two. Hayate coughed and nodded. They're going to be on long-term guard duty after this. Both Chunin winced. Not the gate. Please, anywhere but the gate. Azumo whined. You could be teaching at the academy, with the little kids. Naruto said and both paled. Gate duty's fine. Katetsu said as they left with Hayate after wishing the others luck. Hana-chan, see if the 3 can find a trail. Anko-chan, I know, keep digging. I swear I'm going to give those 2 a kunai enema. Playing hot potato with a live exploding tag near dangerously marked materials. The snake Jonin muttered as she went back to where they thought the office was and started moving rubble. Naruto agreed. How those 2 made Chunin, Kami. He continued his own excavations looking for something, anything they could use to link the dealers with their product. XX. 2 hours of digging with Cage Bunchins doing the heavy lifting unearthed several documents that were scorched as well as a battered disk for the computers. Sealing them away, he looked and found Anko with several more. I think this is it. She said. Everything else went kaboom with the chemicals. Hana had returned and was brushing out Ed's fur. She trimmed the burnt fur and soothed him while the other 2 dug around. Picked up a trail. It heads towards Suna, but it's slow. The person was injured. From the step marks we picked up, the left leg was mangled. Naruto sighed. He focused his will and after slapping his hands together and slammed them to the ground. Anko and Hana watched as the familiar suit of armor rose from the ground. Hey Al. They chorused. During the years training together, Al had become a part of their team. Oh. Hey Anko-chan, Hana-chan, brothers. Alphonse said, waving his steel hand. Al, pay attention. Naruto said, getting the living armor's red glowing eyes on him. I need you to catch up with Hayate and the 2 stooges and have them give this information to the old man. They are to give it to no one else. Al took the charred documents and computer disk. Did you lose your temper again? Al asked, slipping the documents into his empty chest cavity. No, I did not lose my temper. Naruto yelled at the armor. Steady, brother. I think you've been hanging around Ed Ni-san way too much. Your temper's on a hair trigger, and with you being so small. The temperature in the area dropped and both Hana and Anko stepped back, seeing the deadly look in Naruto's eyes. Oh, this isn't going to end well. Both women said at the same time. Ed sat on his haunches and sighed. Man, my family is not right in the head. He watched as the blonde and the armor went into a taijutsu fight. He shook his head as Naruto slammed his hands together and a huge cannon appeared out of the ground. Tisk. I was never that hot-headed. Ed said before the explosion filled the air. I'm sorry. Al's yell filled the air as the cannon took aim again. The soul armor rushed away. I'll get these to Hayate-san. Bye. The armor cleared the wreckage of the base with ease that made both women jealous. Naruto panted and growled. Oh, he is so going to get it when we get home. Hana sighed. If you're done abusing your younger brother, how about we get on the trail of the injured survivor? Yeah, Anko said. She then smirked. And perhaps when we finish this mission we can have a private party this time. What do you say, Naru-kun? Naruto blushed at the implications Anko's wink meant and Hana's answering growl. Naruto closed his eyes, soon writhing under him, her growls as Naruto's eyes snapped open and he squeaked. Come on, let's go. He scooped up Ed and rushed away. Behind him the 2 were talking. Must you do that? It's bad enough my mother, Hana growled. So, next time grab him first. Wah, he's Anko smirked. Hot, powerful, blue eyes to die for, a ninja. I was going to say 16, nearly 17. Hana said. Anko looked at her. Han, he's old enough to die for the village, he's old enough to do other things. Your mom waited till he was 16 at least before getting some. If your annoying brother hadn't gotten between us last time, I would have beaten your mother there and Naruto-kun would have woken up in my bed this time. Hana stopped walking. Get over it, Hana. We've known him for 8 years. You do the same thing I do and compare every guy we meet to him. Even unintentionally. Yeah, he may be bumbling and clueless, but how many times has he been there when you or I after a bad date cried on his shoulders and then we hear later that said former date was entered into the hospital? Hana nodded, remembering Ebisu's comments, and now the Jonin won't be anywhere near her. He even ran in fear that time she popped up next to him during a meeting. We could share, Anko said, and laughed as Hana tripped over her own feet. Your mom's not quiet on what kind of lover Naruto is. At 16 he's made your mom howl. This next batch of genin, one of those skinny little trollops might catch his eye as they're his age. Do you want one of the Uchiha's fangirls to set her sights on him and end up crushing him? Hana shook her head. She couldn't stand it when her own mother got around Naruto, but her mother was her alpha. If any of those skinny little bitches sniffs around him, I'll shake them by the scruffs of their necks and put a boot up their scrawny asses. Hana thought. Anko smiled. She'd been thinking of this since Naruto's 16th birthday. She'd hidden herself in her apartment when the thought first hit her. She then spoke with Eboshi, who laughed and had told her she thought that it would happen. Yeah, I'm 10 years his senior, but when he held me while I cried that night, I felt safe for the first time, and he's always there, and he's defended me against everyone, even when I was a bitch to him that first year. Anko looked over at Hana, who was deep in thought now. I know he's heir to 2 clans, and the restoration laws are going to hit him when he's 18, but if I and Hana are there, we won't have to share with anyone else. And I trust her. She beside Kurenai and Naruto has become my best friend in 8 years. If I have to share Naruto, Hana will do. I'd ask Nai-chan, but she's sniffing around Asuma. Shaking her head, she saw Naruto was a bit ahead of them. Ed was on his shoulder and she could tell the two were deep in conversation. Snort, knowing those two, it's about alchemy, or some other project they're working on. If it weren't for Sume, I'd think Naruto wasn't interested in women. She thought about the other night and how tired her fingers got as she heard the two of them. I doubt that the Inuzuka compound, even as drunk as they were, slept until they were done. She snickered and Hana looked at her. A woo, Anko said, and Hana blushed. Anko laughed as she rushed to catch up to their blonde teammate. Hana thought about what her mother had said, and what Anko had said. Do I really? Could it work? Her eyes fell on Naruto, who turned towards Anko, who slapped him on his other shoulder. His soft smile warmed her heart. After this mission. I'll talk with him about it after this mission.